Welcome in, ladies and gentlemen, to NBR, or as we like to call it around here, Nothing But Rants, the show where I find topics that I'm oddly passionate about and I pontificate upon them. These are not hot takes, but rather takes that I'm hot about. What's up? Really like that. You really like that?
Let's shut up and grind some tape.
What is up, ladies and gentlemen? Welcome into the Film Guy Network on a beautiful Monday evening. I feel extremely blessed to be here with you today, and I feel confident that I'm going to be here with you for quite some time. So I appreciate you for being here today. Make sure you hit that thumbs up button, like, subscribe, rate, and review. I got a quote for you. Quote, "It feels like my budget is about to look like a murder scene." Now, why would a budget look like a murder scene? Well, a lot of red numbers, a lot of blood across the budget. That was an AD, an athletic director in the new Power 4, and that was the headline grabber in Dennis Dodd's article today titled, this is from 5 days ago. This is how I know it's important that we do the reading around here, because I guarantee you, not a lot of people read this one, not a lot of people paid attention to this one, and I think it's probably one of the more, I'm not going to say daunting, but one of the more revealing articles that we've had in recent memory, just in terms of where the landscape is in college football and where these court cases and how these court cases are ultimately going to impact the sport that we love. The title of this article, again from Dennis Dodd, is, quote, "College sports further dividing among haves, have-nots may be spurred by huge financial hits from court cases." If I were to tweak this as a managing editor, title, a little bit long there, DD. Okay, let's bring that one down just a little bit. A couple more adjectives and verbs in here with a little bit more SEO titled terms might be beneficial for this article. Nonetheless, it's loaded with great stuff. The synopsis of this article that I'm about to summarize. The article that I'm about to summarize for you can be found on CBS Sports, but the synopsis of this is essentially the NCAA, guys. The NCAA is not the only one that's on the hook to take a hit from some of these court cases. I think a lot of the public narrative is the fact that, hey, these NCAA or these court cases that the NCAA is battling right now, good. They're going to ruin the NCAA. They're going to end the NCAA. And yes, these major court cases that we're going to talk about tonight will ultimately end the NCAA, but they will also ultimately impact college football programs and Power 4 athletic programs around the country. I want to read you a quote. This is the first quote I got for you today. "Put up a yellow crime scene tape and pull up a chair because, quote, what if is getting complicated. The NCAA and the Power 5 conferences find themselves as defendants in 4 high-profile antitrust lawsuits. Settlements in those cases have become the next hurdle toward whatever college sports will ultimately look like moving forward." Like I just told you, guys, the NCAA is not the only one on the hook for some of these cases. There's 4 primary cases that you need to be aware of. One real big one that's coming down in 10 months. It's a gentleman by the name of Matt House, who is a competitive swimmer, will ultimately be in the Olympics coming soon for the American team. He is a swimmer from Arizona State, and he is the primary plaintiff in the House versus NCAA court case that will ultimately redefine the landscape of college sports, believe it or not. It is a swimmer, boys, a swimmer that's most likely going to bring down the NCAA. These 4 lawsuits that are all antitrust lawsuits based or antitrust based, they will not only, like I said, decapitate the NCAA, but these 4 court cases, in all 4 court cases, the NCAA member schools themselves, the universities, are listed as defendants on these cases. So though the NCAA will bear most of the financial burden of these cases, the NCAA will not be able to swallow all of these financial burdens. Just for an example, this House versus NCAA lawsuit that I just mentioned, it has what is called treble damages that could reach as high as, listen to this number, gentlemen, $4.2 billion that will ultimately be spread out between the NCAA and whatever member schools will ultimately be able to swallow the bullet for all of this. So, again, this will ultimately define the landscape of college football. I think everyone got tied up in that Tennessee lawsuit, and everybody gets tied up in maybe a Super League and all this other stuff. But the lawsuits that are going down in the court cases right now, the member schools themselves are on the hook. I got another quote for you. Even if settled, the cases may cost 8 figures per school. That's into the millions. The NCAA would no doubt cover some of the settlement, but since the Power 5 conferences are also defendants, schools are almost certainly going to shoulder some of the burden. And if they can't, here's another quote. If there is a settlement in that House case that we're talking about right now, said a third Power 5 athletic director, that's going to define the new subdivision. So essentially, the new subdivision after this court case, gentlemen, will be the defining line of demarcation of haves and have-nots. Basically, will you be able to fit the bill for this lawsuit or will you not? Will ultimately decide who gets into this, quote-unquote super league that we're ultimately headed towards in college football, right? And it's ultimately going to revolve around rev sharing, okay? Revenue sharing is what's ultimately coming next, all right? Another quote for you. A settlement in the House case and all the others could almost be like what a collective bargaining agreement would sort of look like, said Mitt Winter, a Kansas City-based sports law attorney. In terms of, here's what the rules are going to be moving forward, NCAA, you're going to share it with the athletes. So basically, this lawsuit, gentlemen, instead of trying to get Congress to help us out or trying to have the NCAA actually pass a bill or trying to create Charlie Baker's Super League or whatever, instead of doing all that, it looks like we're going to basically collective bargain what the NCAA is and is not allowed to do under the new landscape of college football via these lawsuits. So this Matt House, lawsuit versus the NCAA, however it is delved out in court, will ultimately set the landscape and the precedence for what revenue sharing will look like beyond this lawsuit, essentially. So there's that. So we're going to actually have some type of conclusion, it seems like, after this lawsuit, or at least a governing body, or at least a court body saying that this is what they're actually allowed to do and what they can't do. But here's the deal. It's not the only issue, right? The issue is not, whether or not we can get some type of governing body or whether we can set some type of revenue sharing. Everyone agrees that players should be paid. Everyone agrees that revenue sharing is ultimately the finality point that we're going to reach upon, right? It's what we're going to have to go to in order to save college sports. The problem is not everybody's going to be able to afford revenue sharing. You guys know this, right? Not everyone is going to be able to afford what's going to be, hey, you're going to have to take part of this revenue and give it to athletes. We talked about it last week. College athletic programs are not revenue producing. They are revenue producing, but they do not save that revenue. That revenue is reinvested into programs around the governing body or around the athletic program, right? They do not take home net revenues at the end of the year. They show gross revenues on their profit statements, right? They ultimately end up spending all of the money. Not all of these are profitable entities. So what will happen, right? If these lawsuits end up, they settle on these lawsuits like we mentioned, and there is that 8-figure or 7-figure settlement fee for all 68 Power 5 or Power 4 programs, and you're a program like Rutgers, or you're a program like Wake Forest, or even a program like Georgia Tech, if you're a program like this and you cannot afford these fees, what are you going to have to do? Well, it's laid out in this article, and I've been waiting on this one. I've been mentioning this Saudi money over and over again. And I think people think I'm joking. I think people hear that and they're like, Brooks is really scared about the nature of college football and where it's going to go, even so much that he's giving these hyperbolic examples of Saudi Arabia private equity money coming into college football. We are not far from this. We're not far from this at all, because when propositioned with, hey, will you put up the money to get into this Super League, or will you cease to exist from a football program standpoint? All right, and the only difference between the two is whether or not I need to leverage some debt. Well, I'm here to tell you, universities, because they're big enterprises, actually have access to, quote, really cheap debt. That comes from the strategy consultant with Altamore Collins and Company. I don't even know who that is, but he's a private equity joker who just told you all of these universities can acquire massive debts. You know why? And he's quoted, because universities are zero risk for lenders. The University of Michigan isn't going anywhere. So essentially the JP Morgan folks can give a bunch of money to Florida State, and that's what they're about to do. You know how Florida State's getting out of their ACC contract? They're going to private equity funds. The JP Morgan associates are already agreed to give them whatever it's going to cost to get out of the Big Ten or get out of the ACC. So yeah, guys, we're here. Private equity firms, and here's the quote. They're licking their chops, by the way, folks. They're not just waiting to help out. They are out here licking chops. You ready? Right here. Here's the quote. Meanwhile, there is a specter of private equity firms swooping in to buy low and sell high on what college athletics has become, an undervalued stock. Despite record revenues, instability and lack of leadership in the space means college football might be worth 10 times more than what it is now, according to Jerry Cardindale, founder and managing partner of Redbird Capital Partners. Again, Florida State's already in the midst of this with something they call Project Oscala. Project Oscala, I'm probably not pronouncing that correctly, is basically the Freedom Act of getting us the hell out of this ACC contract. JP Morgan, like I said, going to go ahead and buy them out of that and pay whatever it costs to get them out of that. Boys, I've been talking about it. I've been joking. Hey, that oil money coming for your beloved sport of college football, but somebody's going to do it. Somebody's going to take that money and run because football is so important. Welcome in.
Yeah, absolutely welcome in. I think maybe to the audience it's like, golly, I feel like all we talk about on the show is the future of college football, where it's heading. All of this money has to be paid off, or all these teams have to buy their way into this league. But I think that with every piece of information that we continue to get about this, with every article that we come on here and explain to the audience, it's just another step of showing like this is a continuing process. This isn't just saying like this is what we're projecting everything to be or whatever. Like this is hypotheses or whatever. Like this is actually happening. And every time we come on here and say it, we're a step closer into that direction of this becoming what reality is.
Yeah, and it's some of these decisions are going to be the most monumental decisions you'll ever see in college athletics. Like this isn't, are we expanding to 12 or 14 or who's going to be in what conference? We're talking about like what is college athletics as a whole going to look like?
Yeah.
Is North Carolina going to have a swim team because of this? It's serious.
Yeah, there's going to be major budget cuts, you would imagine, on the back end of this if it ultimately happens. So the idea that the line of demarcation is going to be, can you pony up to this lawsuit is pretty wild to me. We're not even going to have to wait around for anybody to save college football. It looks like the court system's going to do it. So that might be good news, but it's still 10 months away. And not only that, that's the start of the trial or the court case between House and the NCAA. And it sounds like, based off the reading that I did in this extended reading on this House and NCAA lawsuit, it sounds like this Matt House guy, the reason they chose him is not because he's the greatest athlete in the world. If they wanted that, they would have chose Caleb Williams. But more so, he is the chief plaintiff because this dude is willing to stand in there and get grilled. Like he is getting, depositions. He's basically having to sit in through like hours and hours and hours of probing from the NCAA during this lawsuit. So he's the one signing up for all of this. That's why his name is attached to the bill. It's not because he's some super high, he's going to make an Olympic team, it sounds like, but it's not like he's Michael Phelps. He just has Michael Phelps as coach, is what I saw in the article.
Signed up to be a martyr, essentially.
Basically, a swim martyr. Do you think, I was going to ask, you think he wears his Speedo underneath his suit?
I mean,
if you're a swimmer, you just strap
it might
up
be
in a Speedo.
comfortable. It's
like hoopers wear their pants underneath, your shorts ready to hoop at any point. Do you think swimmers just rock the Speedo underneath everything?
That's actually
just
really
an efficiency-based metric.
I've never thought about that. I mean, sure, it's happened before.
I don't know.
We should get him on and only ask him that question.
Hey, take your pants off.
Welcome into tonight's show. We got a loaded one for you, as we always do. We're going to talk about some stocks potentially dropping in the NFL draft. We're going to continue our discussions about Alabama. They seemingly been in the show notes for a good minute. I met a gentleman in the Kroger today that, was like, hey, are you so-and-so? And I said, yeah. He's like, I'm actually a Bama fan. I told him to tune in every Monday, Tuesday, and Thursday because we've been talking a lot about Alabama. We got some more news and notes coming out of that program. Mattress Mack, don't know if you know about him, but he is a pretty famous gambler out of the Houston area. He made the show notes tonight. The On3 coaching rankings come out. We're going to talk a little bit about that. And then we are going to rank our top future quarterback rooms around college football. I think that's an interesting topic to discuss tonight. But first, I want to give a quick shout out to our friends over at Prize Picks. If you have not already, please head over to prizepicks.com, use promo code Brooks. Sign up today. You'll get a 100% deposit match. What does that mean? You put up to $100, you will get matched instantly with $100 right there in your account. It's Taco Tuesday tomorrow. A lot of good deals to get in over there on prizepicks.com. Again, promo code Brooks. Make sure you're hitting that thumbs up button, like, subscribe, and rate and review him. We do have a tremendous interview with Sedrick Van Pran, former center from the University of Georgia, coming up in our local hour. So about 45 minutes from now, we're going to pop off with that Sedrick Van Pran interview. So make sure you're sticking around for that. It is a tremendous, one-of-a-kind interview. Not only that, we put him up on the board. We talk a lot of football. That's going to be made available over on patreon.com/Brooks Austin. So make sure you're hitting that thumbs up button. If you haven't already, please feel free to subscribe. All right, gentlemen. Do we want to talk about this Marvin Harrison story?
I do.
Yeah, let's hear it.
Seems like it's been the kind of the buzz of the NFL draft world as of late. AJ Will, you were the one that sent it into the chat today.
Yeah, I mean, it was something that just typical scrolling through Twitter, and then I kept seeing this. I think it was from Daniel Jeremiah I first saw it from, and he was discussing the fact that NFL teams now are starting to say that Malik Nabers is the number one wide receiver on their board. It is not Marvin Harrison Jr., and it's starting to create this debate of who do you pick at number one as the top wide receiver off the board. And then I think Dane Brugler,
Dane Brugler did quote tweet it.
He did. He also was discussing about it. So this is an actual topic that is happening amongst NFL teams. You know, many people believe that maybe the Arizona Cardinals are just going to hone in on Marvin Harrison Jr. It's not going to matter. But there's a legitimate discussion going on, it appears, of maybe Malik Nabers is the top wide receiver that's going to be in this class.
It's very interesting. I looked it up in multiple different articles. I saw the Daniel Jeremiah tweet, who, by the way, I think is like gold in this industry. I think as far as NFL draft talk goes, there is Daniel Jeremiah, and then there's a large margin, and then there's everybody else, whether that be evaluations I trust, whether that be, hey, I'm hearing this, I trust. Anything that comes out of DJ's mouth, I'm with. I think he is as good as it gets. And you mentioned it. He tweeted out today, wouldn't be shocked if Nabers goes over Marvin Harrison Jr. Vegas would be, though. I looked it up today. The Vegas odds still hold true. Marvin Harrison Jr. currently a favorite at -250 to be selected number 4 overall by the Cardinals. Nabers at +850. So pretty sizable gap there between the two in Vegas. So if you do believe that this is possibility, maybe go put some money on Nabers out there. Can't get it on Prize Picks, but I'm sure there's somewhere that you can get that. I think this ultimately molds into a larger discussion of, like, what type of receiver do you like? There's not a ton of Malik Nabers's. You know, he's kind of a very unique talent. That's why he's going to be evaluated as highly as he is. But from a less than 6'1", kind of built like a running back, elite after the catch, super explosive. We've seen a lot more of these come into the league as of late, and a lot more of these really impact the game. I think most recently DJ Moore being a prime example of this, right? A 6'1", 200-pound receiver that you know is going to run somewhere in that 4.42 range, that when the ball's in his hands, he is a game breaker, right? And then on the other side of the discussion, you have Marvin Harrison Jr., who I would compare, if we were to compare Nabers to DJ Moore, I would compare Marvin Harrison Jr. to more like a Justin Jefferson, where this is a guy who we can put on the island by himself as a true X, and he's going to be an impossible cover through the full pro-style route tree, where if I were an offense like the Arizona Cardinals, my quarterback is Kyler Murray, I would imagine that system is going to be very quick game oriented. It's going to be very, quick read, kind of get the ball out quickly and then extend with the quarterback's legs if something promotes itself. That would lend itself more to a Malik Nabers discussion, where if I had more of a pro-style quarterback, more of a quarterback who wants to drive the ball down the field like a C.J. Stroud, I'm drafting Marvin Harrison Jr. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think this is an important conversation to always have during the NFL draft, because I think a lot of people get caught up in, like, when we label Marvin Harrison Jr. as a clear-cut number one wide receiver, that doesn't necessarily mean that he fits the mold of the first team off the board that needs a wide receiver. I mean, you can apply this to a lot of different positions, and I think this happens a lot in the first round of, like, holy cow, why did they just pass up on this player because it seems like this was the best player available? It all has to do with, like, fits on whether your defense plays that play style, if it fits that person's personnel. There's so many things that come to this conversation, and I think it's exactly why this conversation is struck up for sure.
And just like what your roster's predicated on.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like, do you have a true X that you believe where in the slot or at Z you're like completely hopeless, or do you have reasonable parts at those positions and you're hopeless at the X spot? I think the Cardinals have taken a bunch of stabs in recent drafts with guys like Andy Isabella. They took the kid out of Purdue a couple years ago. These like real small, slotty type receivers where their best player in the program's history, or the organization's history, is a true bodied X in Larry Fitzgerald. Mm-hmm. So maybe they result back to that with Marvin Harrison Jr., who, by the way, from this guy's a true X, gonna survive, gonna be great, I think he's the safest projection we've had at that type of mold and that type of prototype in a very long time.
Yeah.
Like, I wouldn't even put Jamar Chase into this discussion, even though Jamar Chase was a top 5 pick.
Yeah.
I thought Jamar had some questions. I mean, we saw some drops even in his rookie year. Marvin, walk into the league 10 years, going to be a primary receiver. I feel that good about him.
Do you think that if he does anything at the combine, I mean anything at all, that we don't have this discussion right now? Because I think part of it comes from the fact that you haven't seen him since, what, December?
Yeah.
He hasn't stepped on the field since December, whereas Malik Nabers has kind of gone through the ringer and put himself out there with, as far as tape and athleticism go. I kind of wonder that the fact that he hasn't been able to do that, people start to just see the newness of it now. Of, hey, here's all these.
And I would be here with that discussion. And my mind immediately went that maybe like, hey, they're knocking him for some of this stuff. But Nabers opted out of everything at the combine too. You know, I mean, he met with teams, but he didn't run. He didn't do he didn't do anything pro day. He literally did. I don't even think he did media availability. He might have. I can't quite remember, but did media availability and then dipped out. Did the medicals and then dipped out.
Right.
Very similar to what Marvin Harrison Jr. did. So, except Marvin didn't even meet with the media. So, I would, normally be like, hey, you opened yourself up to this, right?
Right.
You skipped your pro day. You did all this stuff, but I don't think the same has been there for Nabers. Now, I would imagine Nabers is going to do his pro day at LSU, which has to be soon. I haven't seen it on Twitter lately. So it has to be within the next couple of days, you would imagine. Will you Google that for me?
Yes.
See when LSU's pro day is? It has to be in the next couple of days, because I remember Daniels talking about it at the Combine, talking about not wanting to throw here because he wants to give everybody the opportunity to come to his pro day. Another guy I saw on Twitter today who I trust his evals, I think sometimes he can be a little hot take.
March 28th.
All right, so they got another 10 days. They're in the back end of the cycle. But anyways, Chris Sims was on Twitter today. He put out his wide receiver rankings. He had both LSU guys ranked above Marvin Harrison in a separate category of like game breakers, or I think he called like, I don't know what he
said something like X factors,
difference makers, something, and then just a solid guy. He ranked Marvin Harrison Jr. in that just a solid guy category, and then had Brian Thomas and Malik Nabers ahead of him. I watched the combine, and you were there sitting right next to me.
Yep.
I thought Brian Thomas looked bad.
It didn't look
good that day. Now I know the tape is run by you good, and I'm a great in the air receiver, but I just didn't see that at the combine.
I don't even know if I want to say it looked bad or not even good. It didn't look polished.
Yes, it looked out of control.
Yeah,
and I didn't love just in general the way the body moved.
Mm-hmm.
And when I see that coming out of high school or college guys, I wonder if you're going to be able to separate an elite level on the next level.
Now, I mean, I'd have to imagine that he's made a career out of playing like that in college. So
for sure,
it's interesting to see. So I mean, is it going to translate? I don't know, but it is alarming to see what we saw. Just kind of all over the place, body movement and things such as that.
My thing though is like for a guy like him, who's been wide receivers through his entire college career, next to a guy like Malik Nabers. How do you go about evaluating him as, like, if you want to use him as a first-round pick, like, how do you go about evaluating someone like that who's been wide receiver too, but maybe someone somehow take him in the first round? I feel like first-round guys, you're bringing him in to be your top guy, your top wide receiver. Mm-hmm. How do you go about, like, thinking, like, that's going to translate, like, we want him to be our main guy, but he's been wide receiver too his entire college career?
Yeah, also, if everyone's out here talking about these two receivers from LSU like this, how do you evaluate Jaden Daniels?
Right.
Like, do you question your evaluation of him just a little bit? Because if those two guys are top 10 evals, you can go ahead and guarantee right now, if you draft Jaden Daniels in the first round, your receivers aren't as good as what he just got done playing with.
Correct.
And that would be a primary concern for me.
I think the only rebuttal you have to that is Joe Burrow. I mean, Joe Burrow had pretty much the exact same situation where he had two first-round franchise receivers playing on his team, and he went into a Cincinnati situation where he didn't have a Jamar Chase at first.
Yeah.
Or a Justin Jefferson.
They immediately allocated resources to get him those things.
And then didn't even wait on Chase. I think they gave him his money within 3 years. They didn't even wait for the 4th or 5th year on that rookie deal, did they?
No, I don't
He's
think
already got his money, hadn't he?
Yeah.
Yeah, so there's a lot to be had. You got to have weapons, man.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's why, like, RG3 did the thing where he's like, Caleb Williams should not play, for the Bears. He should Eli Manning that joker. I'm like, I don't know, man. He's gonna have weapons now.
They're clearly setting it up for someone to come in there and take over.
They got him a shit ton of weapons.
Absolutely. Who would you take, Nabers or MHJ?
I'm more of a reassurance type of guy in the
Yeah.
first round. I'll take MHJ.
Yeah.
I mean, the floor for Marvin Harrison Jr. is so high. And I mean, the ceiling's even higher. That I think having a guy where, like you said, he's a surefire 10-year player.
You like the Justin Jefferson comp?
I do like that one.
I do. Yeah.
Been playing a superstar mode on Madden. I got drafted by the Vikings. He's unstoppable. But yeah, I see Jefferson's taller and longer than I think a lot of people realize. He's a good 6'2". I think Harrison measured in close to 6'3". I don't think you can quote me on this. I don't think Jefferson ran all that fast at the combine. I think he was high 4.4s, maybe even in the 4.5 range.
You looking it up?
And I don't think Harrison would have been some like 4.38 runner.
No, he wasn't.
He's very smooth.
Not a burner at all.
Yeah. You got it for me?
I thought it was pulling up. It's loading.
Wi-Fi be bugging every once in a while. But nah, I'm with y'all.
He was a burner, 4.43.
Oh, wow. Okay. Wrong. But plays smooth.
Yes.
Is exactly what I think of Marvin Harrison Jr. All right. I'm going to be honest with you boys and girls listening to today's show. Make sure you're hitting that thumbs up button, like, subscribe, and rate, and reviewing. Kalen DeBoer was on Pete Thamel's podcast, or was it no, it was Bruce Feldman's podcast over there with The Athletic. And there's like 2 paragraphs worth of quotes in this article. I don't know if you guys read it. Man's is kind of a nothing quote, and that's okay. I'm honestly, I would rather you be a nothing quote or an insightful quote. Nowhere in between. If you're a clickbait quote, you're bad news for a college SID. If you're a nothing quote, great news. If you're an intriguing quote, you probably are like the intriguing quotes for me have always been the great coaches. I think that's why they're intriguing to me. So I think the intriguingness is a confirmation setting right there for me. But anyways, I got some quotes here. This is an article titled right here, Kalen DeBoer addresses challenges replacing Nick Saban. This comes from On3, and I believe Pete Nakos wrote this article. I always want to give guys credit when we can find it for them. But here's the first quote I want to read to you. Quote, and this is being asked directly about the challenges of replacing Nick Saban. That's the preface. So let's see if we get to a landing spot on answering that question. The answer is no. Here we go. Quote, there's a lot of thoughts that go through my mind. I think a lot of it is you just have to enjoy what you're doing and the people you're with. Then that leads to perspective. I guess what I would say is when every day you enjoy going to work and the people you're with, you trust and believe in them, it allows you to not have to put on this face. You're still the leader of the crew, and you provide the guidance and organization and helping the program really uphold the standard that you have set.
I mean, great. He's right, but
Flash words.
that had nothing to do with what was asked.
No, I think this is a no quote guy.
He's intentional for sure.
It's an intentional no quote guy. I can't. There's a coach that reminds me of this. I can't remember. So to talk about that, what do you think of coaches that are just like, I'm not going to give you nothing. I'm just going to be dry, and then off camera, I'm going to be an actual person. I'm not going to be a robot. There's a lot of these.
I mean, from our line of work, it kind of sucks, but at the same point, you also understand it. Like, I feel like a head coach's job when talking to the media is to give them as little as possible, and then the job of the media is to get as much out of them as possible as you can. And it's just a tug and pull the entire way. So when you have a coach like this, it makes things very hard, but they're good at what they do, so you have to respect it.
Well, I think it's easier too in like situations where like it's you're amongst a group of media members. It's easier because you're in control of that situation. You're in control of answering the questions however you want. Nobody can really press you anymore on like your question. Once you give your answer, you give your answer. If it's one-on-one with me and you on an interview, like if I ask a question and you kind of beat around the bush a little bit, you don't give me the information I want, I can kind of probe you a little bit more and continue to like get you to finally give me something. So it kind of reverses the roles a little bit depending on the situation. But at the same time, the coach can also be a little bit more in control of the situation on those one-on-ones because they probably are a little more aware of what is going to be asked in those scenarios.
This next quote in the article, I guess, is relative to his coaching hires and who he's brought with him. Quote, I think there's also just the piece where knowing that the way you do things has always been effective. It's gotten the job done and to trust that you don't need to prove something. You're just out there to really You're just out to really make the place that you're at the best it can be and enjoy the moment and the growth and development. Whether it be staff or players, everyone around you, just helping them become the best they can be. Now, I will say this. Dude has made every comfortable move, right? I feel good about this guy. I've worked with this guy, every move possible. I don't have a problem with that. I think a lot of coaches in their first hire, they do that. It's safe. It's comfortable, like I said. My question is, when you start to have staff turnover and you're really, as this quote portrays, you're really dependent upon continuity and feeling comfortable with the guys that you have around you and keeping the guys close that you have. I mean, his DC's worked with him at every stop. His OC that just left him has worked with him at every stop. The DC that he just hired, right, and brought with him, right, the defensive coordinator for South Alabama.
Womack.
That's a guy that he worked with at Indiana. So this is a guy, like most coaches, who bring everybody that they know. My question is, when you start to have success and you start to have staff turnover and you start to have to venture outside of what you know, what do you look like? We will find out very soon, all right, because Grubb is gone. I think Grubb was a huge part of their success at Washington because they were very much so offensive based, and he was very hands-on with that offensive coordinating room and staff. So I think that's going to be a real pivotal point here in the DeBoer development, if you will, as a football coach. Are you willing and able, not only willing, but able to venture outside of your comfort zone to make hirings?
Yeah, it's going to be I mean, you went out of a comfort zone job. Like, he spent most of his time out west. To come and take one of the most proud Southern jobs in college football is going to be very interesting to see. So props to him for doing that. You're obviously going out of your comfort zone for that, but I have no clue how it's going to turn out for him.
I mean, yeah, I think it's fine if you want to do that initially. I think it's interesting that, like, when Kirby broke away from the Nick Saban tree and he went and implemented his own roots in Athens, Georgia, to be at the University of Georgia, when he's got his initial hires, like, he kind of did a little bit of a mix of both. Like, he brought in some guys that were from Alabama with him, but at the same time, he went out and got some guys that weren't necessarily a part of that core coaching tree that he was a part of for so long. And so I think that's kind of benefited him in the long run. And it's kind of allowed him to continue to, like, branch out a little bit. And then when he does get in a bind, maybe where, like, this offseason where he has to go out and make some new coaching hires, he's kind of allocated all these resources to where he doesn't have to put himself in a bind. But I think, especially at a place like Alabama, he's going to be put in these situations rather quickly. And you have to imagine, too, like, even though you've had your boys with you for the entire time in your coaching career, eventually they're going to want to step away, like Grubb did. Eventually he's going to want to go and do his own thing, or eventually he's going to go and chase after his own dreams if that's what he desires. So he's either going to get smacked in the face rather quickly, or he's going to be able to kind of adjust on the fly and make it work.
Yeah, and I think another guy that kind of is an example that testifies to this is Dabo Swinney. I mean, it felt like for years Dabo Swinney's core group of coaches was one of the absolute, like, Brett Venables stayed on that team for a long time, and then when he left, things have kind of gone downhill after that. So it's going to be interesting to see what kind of DeBoer's approach to that is as well.
Yeah, I mean, you can't blame him for being this way, following a situation like this, following the shadow of Nick Saban. You can't blame him for kind of being sheltered a little bit.
Right.
And just kind of, if you want to bring in comfort with you, kind of get your bearings a little bit and just make sure that you're good for at least year one. I don't have a problem with it, but you also have to be prepared to face the consequences of what that might bring.
Yeah, I think, again, the hiring process to me is it's one of the, can you recruit, can you develop, can you hire? I think those are the most important things in this conference. Now, this is a guy who's kind of gone everywhere and kind of proven the opposite. Like, he doesn't recruit anywhere he's gone.
Not really, no.
Not yet. It's top 30 at Washington while playing like a top 5 program. The question is, he has top 10 talent now, top 5 talent now. What's that going to look like? And one thing I said on Snaps today, this is a dude who beat the hell out of football teams that were way better than him on paper for a long time. I mean, everywhere he's gone, he has beaten teams that look better than him on paper. And now he's got one of the better teams in the country on paper. That alone is pretty scary. You know what I mean? If you're just grading this guy out from top to bottom. I also think it's good that he is staying true to himself. This isn't a guy who looks like he's bending to any of the norms, which you have to do one or the other. You can't do both. I think in this case, as a foreigner coming down here, you either have to be open to complete, like, change in who you are. You got to adapt to where you're going, or you need to steadfast on who you are and what you are. You can't be, I'm trying to be me, but I'm also trying to absorb what everyone's telling me I need to be. That's a losing proposition. You got to be one or the other. So yeah, I think that's a good stopping point there. Have y'all seen this Mattress Mack story?
I've heard a little bit about it, but I haven't read it about
All right, so for those who don't know, Mattress Mack is a guy who owns a bunch of mattress stores. Okay, I don't know exactly the name of the company, but I am aware of Mattress Mack because my boy Mattress Mack is one of the most famous and I guess you could say well-endowed gamblers that there is in the world. This is a gentleman who puts down not hundreds of thousands, but millions, puts down millions on some of these games and some of these events. And guys, through name, image, and likeness, we've seen a lot of, issues arise in the world of college sports, right? But we've also seen opportunities present themselves for good stories, right? For fun stories, for make you feel good and give you them butterflies in the innards. You know what I mean? And this is one of those stories, in my opinion. Mattress Max has a huge dub on his hands here. He is going to handle, he's Houston-based, okay, and he is going to handle all of the travel and expenses for all of Houston's basketball team's family members to go to all of their basketball games during the NCAA tournament. Now, great story. Hey, a little golf clap for the Mattress Mack man, right? A little golf clap for the Mattress Mack here. However, there are some reasonings for Mr. Mack doing this.
Of course there are.
Mr. Mack put $1 million down on Houston to win the NCAA tournament. It pays 8-1. So, my question to you, resident gambling man.
What's up?
Is this interference? Is Houston's basketball team likely to play better because they have an advantage of their home field advantage of their family traveling with them because Mac picked up the bill?
I don't think it would be any advantage to winning the entire tournament.
You don't get no additional juice knowing that your whole family's there and the other team doesn't have that.
I mean, teams travel well for March Madness. Like I don't think there's ever been much of a home field or an away advantage when it comes to those games. Like obviously there are some teams that can travel better than others, have more of the means to do so. But you're talking about if you get say each player on the team has a family of 6, that's just an additional 30 people.
Yeah,
like it's not going to make that big of a difference in the crowd. So I don't think it's too much of a conflict.
I mean, if there's anything that we have learned about March Madness over the years and years and years that's been around, anything that you know about sports or any traditions of basketball or home field, throw it all out the window because none of that matters once the tournament gets here. Tournament basketball in general, I mean, you can throw pretty much anything out the window because it's pure chaos. I mean, it's called March Madness for a reason. So, I mean, it is comforting, I guess, to know that your family members are there and that you have some core people, part of your program, that are there to support you. But it ain't going to matter. But Houston is one of the likely candidates to make a deep run in this tournament.
Y'all know shit about hoops. I'm sure they're assuming they're good. I was at the clubhouse up here picking up some food the other day, and Houston was just beating the hell out of
They're one of the
somebody in Big
favorites.
12. Yeah.
It's UConn and it's Houston. Those are the two favorites right now.
The Huskies still out here doing it, huh?
Oh, yeah.
Who's their coach?
Couldn't even tell you.
Couldn't even tell you. Why are they so good at basketball?
Because it's all they got, man.
Is it all they invest in? It's like Mississippi State in baseball?
The women's team was ridiculous for the longest time.
Shouts out.
And then now the men's team has certainly picked it up, and they got it going on for sure.
What happened to Gino? He just ain't into paying the girls? Is that what's happening? He Dabo Sweeney of women's hoops?
I guess a bunch of other programs also are in the limelight, and they aren't anymore. I guess their run came to a close, and everybody's like, oh, time for someone else.
All right. Speaking of time for something else, let's go on to these coaching rankings. This was a pretty heavily talked about tweet as per most of On3's rankings. They do a really good job over there doing the rankings content. They even do the rankings content from other content companies. Have you seen this?
Yeah.
Where they'll slap their On3 grade on some CBS Sports rankings.
And then they put a little tiny logo.
Yeah, put a little tiny logo in the bottom per CBS Sports, but in the top left-hand corner, big fat On3 logo. Just brilliant. 2024 media company. They're doing a great job, though. Good God, they're swallowing everybody up. Let's talk about this. So, 1 to 16. You ready? Kirby Smart, Brian Kelly, Kalen DeBoer, Steve Sarkisian, Lane Kiffin, Josh Heupel, Eli Drinkwitz, Mark Stoops, Mike Elko, Brent Venables, rounding out the top 10. Hugh Freeze, Shane Beamer, Billy Napier, Sam Pittman, Clark Lee, Jeff Lebby. That is the top 16 rankings. This is per Jesse Simonton over there at On3. Off rip, boys. I know y'all looked at the article today. Just off rip, glaringly, obviously wrong, right talking point. What do you got?
As much as I love Elko, I don't know if that would have already went ahead and slapped him into the top 10 right now. I mean, we know nothing about it. You know, everybody thinks it's a cliche to say like, oh, the SEC is a different beast. It's a different world out there. I mean, going from Duke to a place like Texas A&M, that is a different world. That is a different beast. So I think it's a tremendous football coach, but putting him ahead of some of these other names like Hugh Freeze being behind him, I don't know if I'm with that one. I would say that was the first one that popped up like, ooh, don't know if I agree there.
I think the first thing I noticed was I agree with the top 5.
Yeah, the top 5 was pretty solid with me.
I'm solid. I don't have a really a beef until it's not even really a beef. It's more of a, are we sure that's clear cut at 6 and 7?
I've got a pretty big beef. Where the hell is Dan Lanning?
Well, this is SEC. This is SEC.
Okay,
head
that's
coach.
probably why then.
Hey,
But-
long flight.
Yeah, dude.
Long flight over there.
I've had like 10 hours of sleep.
We can talk
last
about
week.
that if you want to a little
We
bit.
can later. It's fine.
Yeah.
But no, my problem is honestly, what has Brian Kelly done to be number 2?
Win 11 games a year at Notre Dame.
He's got a bigger resume than
but that's not the SEC.
he's got a bigger resume than anybody else on this list.
Yeah.
He's more proven than anybody else on this list.
Dude, if he didn't have the family stuff, I think you would be like, damn, Brian Kelly's a good coach, but he's goofy.
I
You don't like
I
him.
think Brian Kelly is a very good coach, and I guess it's probably just because Nick Saban's not there anymore to take the number 1 or 2 spot. That
Yeah.
seeing Brian Kelly at 2 just it feels weird to me. I don't know what Brian Kelly has done necessarily to merit being labeled the second best coach in the SEC, other than win the West your first year.
So who would you want it to then?
That's the problem. I don't know. Like
There's a big toss
there's
Yeah.
such a gap between one. It's so clearly
Some
Kirby
people would
Smart.
want to put Sarkisian there, and you'd be like, but DeBoer's beat him twice.
Yeah.
So what do you do there? You know?
Yeah.
I'm fine. That's why I said I'm fine with it. I'm good with the way 1 through 5 shook out. I don't have any arguments about Kalen DeBoer being ranked over Sarkisian because again, he just beat the guy with lesser talent.
Mm-hmm.
I don't mind Lane Kiffin being 5 and nowhere north of that because Lane Kiffin I think has his holes as a football coach, as does their program. But my kind of toss up was I don't have any differences in opinion between Josh Heupel and Eli Drinkowitz. I really don't. I think they're both about the same.
That's what I was about to say.
To rank one above the other, I don't know how I would do that. So that's where I would have been like, Mark Stoops being in the top 10 made me happy.
Mm-hmm.
I'm like,
Yeah.
everyone hates on Mark Stoops for being 7-5. You go coach at Kentucky. You let me know how it worked out.
I mean, he's a model of consistency in that
Yeah.
in a conference that is full of killers.
Is it you that went to Lexington with me?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Lexington. Good luck. You know what I mean? Good luck. Good luck recruiting well enough to be a top 8 SEC football coach. Venables just taking a tank, man. I think everyone thought he was going to be a better football coach as a head coach than he has been. And the deficiencies have been on his side of the football. So it's been bad defenses 2 years in a row.
It's just the Oklahoma curse, I guess.
Yeah.
You just can't get him out there. I don't know. Now it is still just 2 years into this process for him, and I think that what kind of hurts Venables in this scenario is that he is going to continue to be measured up against someone like Steve Sarkisian, not just because it's Oklahoma versus Texas, the big rivalry, but just because they entered into this phase at the same time. They're both entering into the SEC at the same time, and Steve Sarkisian has already had success making the college football playoff. It looked like now year 2 was a lot better than year 1 for Venables. Year 3, this is the big question mark. I think especially with Arnold being your quarterback, you're kind of really rolling into your players. This is your core identity as a coach. Year 3, we call it Judgment Day, and that's exactly what it's going to be. It just sucks that you're going to have to do it going up against an SEC schedule.
What has Hugh Freeze done to be ranked ahead of a guy like Brett Venables or anyone on this list?
He's not ahead of Venables.
He's at 11, but I think Hugh Freeze did enough at Ole Miss and did enough at Liberty to make me know that he's a really good football coach. Now, whether or not he colored outside the lines at Ole Miss is ancillary to the discussion because you can color outside the lines now.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Well, maybe not as much as he did.
I mean, why not?
You don't think that's gonna ever be an issue?
I mean, let's be honest, okay? The NCAA got him for hookers on the school phone, and
Right.
I think they were escorts was the terminology in the NCAA investigation. So let's not call them hookers. Let's be proper with the term escorts. They got him for the escorts on the phone. They got him for the improper paying of rent. But the reason they went and got them for all that was because they were paying players at an obscene rate, and everyone ratted on them. That's how the NCAA system used to work, guys. All right, here's how it works. Everybody out here cheating in the old NCAA method before NIL, okay? Everybody was out here cheating, the good programs. However, if you were Ole Miss and all of a sudden you landed Laramie Tunsil, the Treadwell kid, Robert Nkemdiche, and you land all these 5 stars that cost hundreds of thousands of dollars in cash, and you start landing them all in a row, well, guess who's snitching? Everybody. Everybody's snitching. And once they start snitching, the NCAA used to work as a hotline bling, right? Whenever that hotline was blinging about one team over and over again, they went and got them. You know who operates like this? And the in-state folks listen to this will resonate with this very, very quickly. The GHSA works like this. When the GHSA hears one school keeps getting transfers in, guess who they go visit? That one school. All right, the NCAA method used to work like this. Now, there is no NCAA method. It's the same reason that the 3 schools got called about NIL, Florida State, Florida, and Tennessee. They were wilding. We told y'all about that a while back, but nobody cared because Tennessee drugged the NCAA in the court case, and everybody's like, oh, blow it up in the NCAA, yay! And now here we are with no ruler. So anyways, yeah. Where were we at?
I was talking about Hugh Freeze and how I don't know what he's done to be ahead of some of these coaches, at least at Auburn.
He showed the ability to get people to invest in his program at an obscene rate at Ole Miss, and the early indications is he's done the exact same thing at Auburn.
Fair enough.
You get Cam Coleman, the 5-star out of Phoenix City, who was committed to Texas A&M. Wasn't cheap, right? Wasn't cheap. We all know this. A&M out here doing it. A&M was out here being one of the ones, as was Texas. All right, as was USC. There are some schools that out here are willing to pay higher rates than others. It is very, very out and up front about this nowadays, particularly with their ability to have no rules. So Auburn and Hugh Freeze, in my opinion, Hugh Freeze has shown enough in order to tell me that Auburn is going to turn that thing around from a recruiting standpoint, which ultimately leads me to believe they're going to turn it around from a wins and loss standpoint.
I know he has to kind of be ranked here, but do you think that Jeff Lebby's the worst coach in the SEC?
No.
Who do you think is?
Probably Clark Lee. I liked Clark Lee the first year. I was like, this is a good story. And then the second year, we're up on the microphone stand at SEC Media Days for 30 minutes. 30 minutes in 2022. And it was droning. Very, very droning. And if you're going to win at Vanderbilt, you got to have dudes playing like they're part of the fucking Sparta 300, dude. You know what I mean? Like you got to be one of these guys. You got to have a guy that's like instant juice. I want to run through a brick wall and die today for him. I didn't get that from him.
Yeah.
I think Clark Lee is a little too Vandy for Vandy.
Yeah.
Is there anyone that's going to survive? Because I feel like Derek Mason was kind of what you're describing.
I think Fran Brown would have made something shake at that university. But he wouldn't have, I don't think he would have got the job.
You're not, like, Vanderbilt's never going to get, like, a Fran Brown guy.
No.
Like, is Vanderbilt just going to suck forever?
Probably.
Yeah, probably.
That's okay. Vanderbilt, one of these teams that will get cut. They can't fit that bill. You've seen that stadium.
Well, they are. The only thing that's the private institution thing I think might make it. But then again, there's no investigation for it, so it's not going to matter.
But, yeah, I don't think Jeff Lebby's the worst coach in the conference. I think Mississippi State's going to be fun this year. Have you seen their recruiting or the guys they brought in? They brought in 2 6'6", 250-pound tight ends.
Oh, brother.
Yeah, and they got a quarterback in there as well, I think.
Yes.
They got a quarterback. I'll look it up, but go ahead. Any other talking points?
I thought there can be some conversation about 12, 13, and 14 with Shane Beamer, Billy Napier, and Sam Pittman. I think this is another class all listed together, right there in that order. I think this is another group, kind of like what we just said about Eli Drinkowitz and Josh Heupel. They all kind of feel like the same in a sense. They all feel like they can be put in this similar class. I mean, would you change anything in that order? Like, would you put Sam Pittman ahead of Billy Napier maybe, or flip-flop Shane Beamer and Sam Pittman? Like,
I think Shane Beamer at 12 is a little high. I think South Carolina is going to be real bad this year. Real bad, Cowboy.
Do you think that anyone, excluding Jeff Lebby, from 12 on, or no, 13 on, has a job at the end of the season?
Beamer fired. Venables might get some looks, dude. You know what I mean?
He could.
He might get some.
Feeling some pressure.
He might get some hot seat looks. I don't know if they fire Clark Lee, because at this point, at a school like Vanderbilt, they can't afford any buyouts.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
That's
There's no dead money. Zero dead money nowadays.
That's a good point.
Look at all these contracts. You know what? This will just open us to another talking point. This is a good point, because I think you might see a little bit more patience nowadays in college sports with coaching, because they can't just afford to just burn $10 million. That's what you're doing when you're firing these coaches and paying these buyouts. You're literally getting a big garbage tin and you're setting $10 million on fire.
Do you think that the way revenue splits, eventually when we get to that model, it's going to change the way coaching contracts are structured? Because, I mean, you've got a lot of 10-year, $100 million coaching deals where it's like, like, I don't know if teams that would want to have to bite the bullet on $60 million because you realize 4 years in, like, oh, shit, this guy is not what we thought he was.
You'll see some type of change. You'll see probably average salary decrease and a length of terms will change. I don't think they'll be as long of contracts like you're saying.
Mm-hmm.
This idea that Jimbo got 80 or what was it, 100 over 10?
Yeah.
That's absurd. It won't happen moving forward.
And in turn, that's going to probably lead to more college coaches saying,
maybe.
I'll go to the NFL.
Maybe. I think what it will do is it'll create contract stipulations like in Kirby's, where it's like, we're not going to do a length of terms deal. We're going to do I'm the highest paid salary deal.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I'll get the Saban contract. Anytime anybody gets a pay bump, I get it too. You know, that kind of deal. But yeah, I think there's set to be some changes with regards to the fundings in college sports. Make sure you hit that thumbs up button, like, subscribe, and rate and review. And we got another hour coming up here in just a minute. We're going to talk about these future quarterback rankings. But in our local hour, we have a tremendous interview with our guy, Cedric Van Pran-Granger. We're also going to give you 3 winners from week 1. We're also of spring practice. We're also going to give you 3 takeaways from week 1 of spring practice. But let's talk about these future quarterback rankings, boys. I'm going to go first. I think Texas has the best future at the quarterback position. With Quinn Ewers and Arch Manning right there, you feel pretty good about the next 2 to 3 years at the quarterback position for that program. I also feel really confident about not only Steve Sarkisian's ability to recruit the position at quarterback, but also be able to develop the position of quarterback. And, oh, by the way, if they happen to miss, Texas's budget is there for a Band-Aid solution, right? They have the ability to go out at any moment's notice and buy the best quarterback in college football if need be. I put Oregon at number 2 for very similar reasons, right? I feel really good about Dylan Gabriel. I feel really good about their future with Dante Moore immediately after that. So for at least, again, 2 or 3 years of college football, I think they have a top 8, top 7 quarterback at the position. I do believe that much in Dante Moore. I think a year of sitting and learning the game of football a little bit better in terms of college football will ultimately lead to really good dividends for that program. And again, that budget also tells me they can go out and do whatever they need to at the position moving forward. I put Georgia at 3, right? You got Carson Beck, Gunnar Stockton, and Puglisi. They make a really, really deep room right now. However, the only thing that scares me about this landscape moving forward, they have 3 scholarship quarterbacks on their roster. And though Gunnar Stockton looks to be the guy in 2025, let's just speak hypothetically. Let's say they open it up for a competition as they always do this time next year, and Ryan Puglisi appears to be the guy. Well, then at that point in the fall of 2025, you would imagine Georgia's quarterback depth chart looks like Ryan Puglisi, whoever they sign in 2025.
Colin Drake.
And then nobody, right? And then some walk-ons, unless a body gets added via the transfer portal, which I would imagine happens either this April or next January, right? Or they sign somebody. They're going to have to sign somebody in 2025, which brings that discussion to that one. It's Julian Lewis, it's Ryan Zollers, and then it's Ryan Montgomery, right? Those are kind of the 1, 2, 3 punch of the quarterback board in 2025. Is there a possibility that they sign 2 of them? Maybe. Most likely they sign one of those 3 guys. So, in fall of 2025, it very could well look like Georgia's quarterback room looks like Ryan Puglisi and Julian Lewis or whatever freshman they sign, right? It's good. It's highly talented. It's not as deep as some of these rooms. On to number 4, I put Ohio State. And right now, they're the antithesis of Georgia, right? Right now, Ohio State looks like the deepest quarterback room in the country. They got Will Howard. They got Devin Brown. They got both freshmen and Julian Sain and Aaron Nolan, and then that third-year guy that's just there looking like Kyler Moran. They got a really deep quarterback room. However, in 18 months, if I said that room is Devin Brown and Julian Sain, do you feel so great about that? It's probably most likely what it's ultimately going to look like, right? Will Howard's going to play his last year of college football, and then they will decide whether it's Devin Brown or Julian Sain moving forward, or whether or not Aaron Nolan beats him out. Either way, you're looking at a 2-quarterback room with a sophomore next year and Devin Brown. So there we go. Tennessee makes number 5 for me. I feel really good about Nico Iamaleava. And I feel really good about George McIntyre coming in 2025. I think they have a good system for who they've recruited, okay? They have a pick and stick system that you got to have a big old arm in, and you got to be, semi-athletic in and add some quarterback run into the mix. And I think Nico and George, not only are they that player, but they're eerily similar profiles. So they should be able to have the consistent type of quarterback play for 3 or 4 years. That's my top 5.
I think so. I kind of figured that you would have a very similar top 5 to me, so that's why I threw in some other choices that I'm going to list now as kind of like my personal
outside looking in.
Yeah, absolutely. And Tennessee was definitely one of those for the exact reason of not only Nico and whoever and the people that they're bringing in, but also just because if you kind of feel safe buying into whatever Tennessee's going to have in that quarterback room. I know what Joe Milton was, but at the same time, you're going to get some type of positive production for the most part out of them with what Josh Heupel has built in that offense. So I would buy into that one for the future. I want USC's quarterback room, but I have to have the stipulation that Julian Lewis ends up there. If Julian Lewis does not end up there, then I'm not buying any sort of stock. I would not pick them as my quarterback room for the future. But if Julian Lewis is in the mix there, I would buy into their future there. And then also, I have LSU as my dark horse because I think they have some solid bodies in there, but also because Bryce Underwood is coming in there soon. And that might be something fun to watch with Brian Kelly and knowing what that offense has been.
I really like Colin Hurley, too. I think Colin Hurley is going to be a guy.
Yeah.
That's a guy that reclassed. He should have been in 2025. He reclassed in 2024. He's a dude.
Yeah. I think I like your top 5. I think a couple of more outsides looking in is LSU.
Shit. I think LSU should be in it.
You think LSU should be in the
LSU
top 5?
would have been in mine.
I want to bump somebody out, honestly.
Well,
because I do. I believe in both those guys.
Well, yeah.
Underwood's going to be a freak.
I think the only thing about LSU that have you going against them right now is you haven't really had anyone proven on that roster.
Yeah, and I don't love the high-end ceilings of Garrett Nussmeier and AJ Swan.
Yeah, I don't think that.
Sorry, AJ. I was captain AJ Swan team coming out of high school. Thought he should have went to Maryland. Then thought Georgia Tech should have signed him, but neither happened. Anyways.
Yeah.
Another one starting at Maryland right now, by the way.
Yeah, he would. Another team that I think kind of could have a talented quarterback room. We get to the end of the 2024 season, and it's like, oh wow, they actually were good. Alabama. Jalen Milroe is we know his talent. Ty Simpson's still there. That could end up being good. I don't think they're top 5 right now, but outside looking in, I would put him there.
Lonergan needs to be mentioned in that too.
Yeah,
that article completely left him out.
Really?
Yeah. It was just like, I don't know who Dylan Lonergan is.
Huh.
It's like, okay, you're going to find out. I think if Dylan Lonergan doesn't work out at Alabama, he's going to work out somewhere. He's going to be such a good football player.
So you had Texas as number 1, right?
Yes, I did.
Interesting.
I'm just a Sark guy.
So are you going off just this 2024 season?
No, I'm going off future. Like, give me the next 2 or 3 years of your room.
Okay, so then, yeah,
I feel great about
I agree with you on that because otherwise I think it's Ohio State.
Yeah.
But
I think with Ohio State, the reason why I would have them in mind is because whether you get Julian Sayin or you get Aaron Noland, like either one of those I think are phenomenal options to have. I mean, best case scenario, obviously you keep both of them on your roster and to get to at least expenditure those years with those quarterbacks for a couple more years outside of this next season. But I think just those 2 names alone being in the mix, I think that makes it enticing.
I think there's already some, at least now this is Alabama sourcing. I think there's some general physical limitations about Sayin that are arriving. Right, This is a guy. Look him up. I think he measures in a flat 6 foot, like a $185. This is not a huge human. Okay, this is not a physically traitsy gifted guy. His arm talent is that, but the physical traits outside of that are not.
Ohio State has him listed as 6'1", 203.
So yeah, he's 6 foot, a $195.
Yeah,
you know, even at 6'1", 203, not a huge dude.
No,
right. And the arm talent is great. The arm strength is not like a 1%er. You know what I mean? He's not going to go 70 yards. But he does have the arm talent. I think there's some questions about that room moving forward very quickly after this year. I liked Aaron Noland coming out of high school a lot.
Yeah.
Think his processor is elite. All right. That is our future quarterback rankings. Did we get through them all?
We sure did.
I believe so.
All right. We have a whole nother hour, and we have a very special guest coming up next. His name is Cedric Van Pran-Granger. He started 45 games for the University of Georgia, and he took his time out of his day to come join us.
Welcome into Talk the Dog, the show where we find a bone to pick and a take to give. These are not hot takes. These is dog takes. Can I talk that dog?
What's up? You like that? You really like that?
Let's shut up and grind some tape.
Welcome back in, ladies and gentlemen, to our local hour. We finna talk that dog, and we're going to do it with one of the best Georgia football players in recent memory. That boy SVP going to join the show. Make sure you hit that thumbs up button, like, subscribe, and rate and review. And we're going to start today's local hour, however, with about 15 minutes of spring intel for you. So if you are not signed up on patreon.com/Brooks Austin, if you have not been reading dogsdaily.com over on si.com, if you have not been paying attention, we're about to catch you up with what happened in week 1 of the spring practice calendar. They are through 3 practices, 1/5 of the way through spring practice. So we got some intel for you guys today. We're going to give them twice. So technically we're going to give them 6, a whole tud for you guys today on TTD. First category, we're going to give you 3 winners from week 1 of spring practice, and then we will give you three primary takeaways from spring practice as well. I want to preface the SVP interview with this. I think it is so cool, and I tweeted about this. I think it is so cool that football players leave the University of Georgia and then actively seek out our network to come hang out and talk some football. What we are going to do with him and what we did with Stetson Bennett and what we do with guys like Gary Danielson and what we do with guys like Dan Lanning on this network is a product of this network. That is not, hey, quid pro quo type of interviewing, right? Like where some of these massive companies just get interviews because they're massive companies. We don't get that. We're a mom and pop shop around here, guys. We get folks on this network because they, A, love this network and what it stands for, but B, they know we have a large audience like you guys. So it is a byproduct of your work, but also a byproduct of what this network stands for and what this network means to the athletes particularly that we cover. So shouts out to SVP for coming and joining us tonight. Super excited to watch that one with you guys. But let's do this first. Let's give 3 winners from week 1. I think the number 1 winner of week 1 was very obvious, so we will go ahead and do our classic 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. Colby Young. Colby Young had himself a week of practice, and here's the scary thing about the 6'4", 215-pound, however heavy the dude is, former wide receiver out of the Miami Hurricanes. He's been dealing with an ankle injury. This is a guy who's not even 100% healthy right now, and he has already been a mismatch in practice. Now, I had a lot of people ask me in Discord, what does that mean? Why do we keep hearing about this guy? What specifically is great about him? Well, first of all, he's 6'4". Second of all, he's north of 200 pounds, and he is every bit of it, okay? He is a very large human with a very large catch radius, and he moves really, really well, okay? So when you have that combination of skill sets, when you're an extremely fluid athlete, when you're 6'4 plus, when you're 200 pounds plus, when you're extremely lengthy athlete, right, when your catch radius is really large, you're a mismatch. You're a tough guard and a tough cover. He's exactly been that, guys, through 1 week of practice.
It's everything that you wanted to hear out of that wide receiver room. Even if it is just one name, even if it is just Colby Young, anything positive and that positive, especially from that transfer class, that means that you're on a great trajectory of what 2024 could be.
Now, how do you think that guys like Dylan Bell and Ra Thomas, who are kind of other X's, how do you think they feel about this?
So Dylan probably doesn't really care. Dylan probably sees a drop in his X share, but just finds it elsewhere. Right. They'll play him more at the slot. They'll play him more at the Z. They'll play him a little bit more at running back. They'll do some more jet motions with him, right? They'll find ways to keep 86 on the field. Ra Thomas right now, dealing with, coming back from his foot injury, still not 100%, probably looking at this as a dink in his playing time because Ra-Ra's not a guy that's just going to flip into the slot or flip over to the Z or do anything. He's pretty much a primary X possession type receiver. He's Marcus Rosemi-Jacksaint on steroids. That's what he's supposed to be at the X spot, whereas Colby's supposed to be, if he reaches his ceiling, a true difference maker, the likes that Georgia hasn't had consistently under Kirby Smart.
Yeah, under Kirby Smart.
Like you can do the George Pickens thing, but go through the game logs. It's like every third game for George that he was doing some crazy shit.
Got any other names?
Both ways. Oh, yeah, I do have some other names. The running back room as a whole.
Okay.
I'm going to cheat here. I think the running back room had a great week. 2 names in particular. Trevor Etienne, has shown the ability to be a playmaker and dynamic outside of the tackle boxes, if you will, right? Extension of the run game, any type of quick hitter out into the flat, making guys miss. He's also shown an ability to be a real game breaker with the ball in his hands. In open field, real tough guy to get on the ground. He has had to learn kind of how to practice like a Georgia player practices. Somebody inside the building told me they had to, quote, wash the gator off of him. So there's some general things that are different about the University of Georgia. Like, for example, if you're a running back, I don't care if we're in helmets. I don't care if we're in walkthroughs. I don't care if we're in helmets and shoulder pads. People are going to be punching at the football. So it's just the way it is. Until you end into the end zone, which you better end in the end zone, people on the defensive side of the football are going to be practicing their ball security drills. So they're going to be punching at the ball. You can't get frustrated that they're punching at the ball. You also can't stop once you break the contain of the defense and just assume that your rep is over, right? You got to run through the end zone. There are certain things at Georgia you have to practice a little bit differently, and it shows up on Saturday. But they had a great week, right? Trevor Etienne had a great week. As soon as the pads came on, it was really, really tough and noticeable that Rod Robb was going to be a problem tackling that guy in open field as well. And he's had some metrics on the catapult per sourcing that show that he's not just this 240-pound bruising back that everybody thinks he is. He's actually one of the high, like in terms of a top-end speed, Rod Robb's actually one of the faster running backs in the room.
Interesting. Love hearing that.
And then the last name I have for you, and this is a guy we heard about over on patreon.com/Brooks Austin this offseason. It's Sam Mpemba. And Mpemba out of that edge room has really gained ground on guys like Michael and Damon for playing time this spring and this fall. Okay, Sam Mpemba, a football player who only really started rushing the passer about 36 months ago, is a guy that has found his way into the mix based off a really, really good offseason. Hey, that boy Brooks, give him 3. Who's up?
I'll go next. I got Anthony Evans as my first one.
Hell
I mean,
yeah.
Obviously, that's a clear winner. Already hearing some good rumblings about him.
Boy got that drip, too.
I like me a drippy wide receiver. So that's all good to hear about him. Again, anything positive out of that wide receiver room, especially a young guy, like a guy that you brought in from day one, hearing some good things, knowing that he's continuing what he built off of at the end of the 2023 season. Good things about Anthony Evans. That's a good sight to see and things to hear. And my third one, got to give a shout out to Daniel Calhoun. If you can come in as a true freshman at that offensive line, knowing that the amount of veterans that are in that room, and you're going to be tabbed as a guy that is probably going to get playing time potentially this year. You're going to travel with the football team. You're already being inserted in that mix of guys that they want intact with our offensive line. That's a big old dub for a true freshman.
Big dub. That boy Jay Will. Give him 3. What do you got for me?
All right, so obviously Colby Young is my number one. We all agreed on that.
Yeah.
I kind of want to take a different route with this one. I put Corey Thomas as a winner here.
Ooh.
Because I think he's been put into a position where he can get some serious playing time this year because it's basically him and Jonel Aguero battling for the star. We're coming into this offseason. We didn't really know who that second guy was going to be. They were trying to plug into different guys. They were like, which name's going to be the number 2 guy behind Jonel Aguero? So I think Corey Thomas has put himself in a really good position to be not just a major player this year, but even possibly a starter.
Kyron Jones has found his way into that mix as well. I would say right now the depth chart looks like 1, Jonel Aguero, 2, Kyron Jones, 3, Ja'Cory Thomas. But only because Ja'Cory has just kind of moved over there. He was playing a lot of safety last year.
Right.
But, yeah, I got a note on that and takeaways here in a second. I got a little more intel on the star position, but go ahead.
My next one was Ryan Puglisi. I mean, you continuously just hear like, holy shit, Pug today was making incredible throws. When you have a guy that's a freshman doing that, it's really good to hear from a fan base. Maybe not as much as older guys in the QB room, but Pug has been consistently winning since he stepped foot in Athens.
Hey, that boy Christian Kirby, give him 3. All right, I have some names here on takeaways. We're immediately going to go to takeaways. I'll go first. First takeaway from the first week of spring. I think I mentioned this last week. The offensive line is wrapped up. It's a done deal. Like, they might as well just practice, stay healthy, and develop some young cats. But their quote-unquote travel squad, it's OV, man. They already know who they got. I'm going to go through them right now. Ernest Green, Dylan Fairchild, Jerry Wilson, Tate Ratledge, Xavier Truss, Micah Morris. That's 6 names that will be in the starting 5. Okay, Micah Morris, Dylan Fairchild, they're going to rotate. They're both starters. Just assume them. So that's 6. And then you got to travel Jamal Merriweather and Monroe Freeling. That's 7 and 8. And then Daniel Calhoun is going to travel. That's a 9. And if you need to absolutely have to travel a backup center, Drew Bobo makes 10. Everybody else, that's got to be a daunting mental hurdle you got going on right now. is because, like, if you're, for example, like Bo Hughley. Now, Bo Hughley had a shoulder injury, so let's not necessarily take him. Let's take a guy like our guy,
Malachi Tolliver.
Yeah, well, he's a young cat. Let's take a guy from Carver Columbus, offensive guard. Was a SI or a Adidas All-American out there with
Smith,
us.
Keaton Smith.
Kelton Smith. Let's
Smith.
take a guy like Kelton Smith right now. You're in your second year going into your third fall at the University of Georgia, and there is no foreseeable future, it looks like to me, of you cracking the bus.
Yeah.
Like you getting to travel this year.
Right.
That's daunting, man. That's a tough-ass room right now.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I think that kind of plays into this conversation of when Xavier Truss announced he was going to come back. We talked about there's going to be some type of backlog. Now, it's good that you get Xavier Truss back. I mean, everybody in that room loves Xavier Truss, but it also means that guys like Smith probably not going to get a travel spot this year.
It's tough, man. I mean, there's a lot of good football players in that room. I think one name that has popped out, at least every time I see him, I think Jamal Merriweather's going to play on Sundays. I really do. Every time I look at him, I haven't seen him play a lick of football. Not one. Not a single college snap. Ain't watched it. But if you just look at him, you're like, hey, Sunday guy. Looks like one of them ones. Super excited to see what he looks like in garbage time this year because I would imagine we get it. Right? Same thing for Monroe Freeling. Fun fact, Monroe playing right, Merriweather playing left. At least in the first rotations of twos. Now I would imagine they're flip-flopping during practice because it's practice. They would have to give those guys some reps. My number 2 observation, going back to the star discussion, we entered this spring thinking it was a one-man show, right? Jonah Aguero. We talked all the time. Got to find depth. How are you going to find depth at this spot? Well, as the first week of practice has concluded, I wouldn't say there's a 1-gap 2. I would say there's a 1, maybe a 1B right now at the star position. Okay, Jonah Aguero's played well. Kyron Jones has played enough to maybe make this somewhat of a rotation this spring, from what I've heard. Now, Kyron Jones, for those of you who don't remember, Kyron Jones is a 6'1.5" former high school running back. At 6'1", 205 pounds, the sumbitch ran 10.6 in the 100.
Ooh. Lord.
And if you see photos of Kyron Jones, I texted a source the other day. He looks like a roided up Mark Webb. That's what this guy looks like.
Good God.
He looks like a roided up Mark Webb. He is the most muscular and physically defined corner and defensive back anything that they have in that room. He looks like a Greek goddess. Now, God, not goddess. That'd be a little weird. Looks like a Greek god. However, a little bit stiff in the hips. Okay, a little bit stiff in the hips. However, has seemingly made this somewhat of a discussion. I don't want this to mean, I already can hear the questions. Does this mean Jonah Aguero has not lived up to the hype, has not been the guy that he is? I don't know yet. We'll see. Okay. There has, however, been some development in the quote-unquote competition that is that star battle. Number 3, they hit on a lot of freshmen already. Now, this happens all the time, but I don't remember it happening at this rate. Okay, listen to this. KJ Bolden going to play snaps this year, meaningful snaps. Joseph Jonah going to play meaningful snaps this year. Justin Williams probably going to get some snaps this year. Chris Cole probably going to get some snaps this year. Daniel Calhoun going to get some snaps this year. Ellis Williams, if you told me by the end of the year, maybe it took an injury, but if he started the game, wouldn't be shocked. Jaden Riddell probably going to get some meaningful snaps this year. That's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Oh, and by the way, those are all the 5 stars, right? You look through the 24/7 composites like, oh, dude. Of course they hit.
Mm-hmm.
Georgia known for hitting on these 3 stars, right? Normally it takes a couple years.
Right.
They got one already sneaking his way in. Little guy by the name of Zovi White from Cass High School. Okay, Zovi White was unguardable, my sources tell me, during bowl practices. And I thought, you know what? Might just be one of them things, right? Might just be one of them things. Spring practice, nah. Showing up spring practice now already being just a ball of twitch. I wrote in an SI article yesterday, he is 5'8", 185 pounds, and he is, quote, violently explosive. This is not one of those dudes that just like, oh, he's fast. I felt like Miko's that. Miko, oh, my God, he is twitchy and fast. This dude will dunk on your head top if you're not careful. Okay, I've got video of him in high school at Cass. 1, 2-step, like off 2, just in the middle of the block. Like an absolute yammer, violently explosive is this dude right here.
Violent explosiveness from a guy like that. That just sounds like fun stuff is in store.
Absolutely.
Hearing
From
short
him.
guys are just cooking people is so.
You got to love it, right?
I love it.
You got to love it. But yeah, already hitting
I
on
actually wanna
3
go
stars.
last.
That's wild.
You want to go last? Okay.
Already hitting on 3 stars in 2 months is nuts.
That's good.
Yeah, knowing this early about freshmen like that, that's certainly a good
Oh, and
sign.
I forgot. They think they hit on Pug.
Yeah.
Yeah, we've already
I
talked
mean,
about
all
that.
sources indicate
Yeah,
that. I mean,
everything coming out is that Pug's going to be a guy.
it's gonna be a while before you obviously like
See it.
see it.
Yeah, manifest.
All right, I guess I'm up next. Georgia's going to get a return on their investment. All the transfer guys that they brought in, again, now not every
ROI, baby.
ROI. They're going to get some ROI on this. Now, not every single one of these names has to hit for you to get a return on investment. If Colby Young lives up to what they think he's going to be, I think that alone says, like, yeah, we got a return on investment on that one. Obviously, Humphrey, he's going to be a guy that's in the mix as well. Maybe not being mentioned as much as Colby Young, but I'm sure his name is going to continue to come to the surface throughout this spring practice. So I think you're going to get a return on that. That's great news. When you hit the portal as hard as you did this offseason, it's good to know that you hit on some of these guys, and it's going to bring fruition to your program. The second one, Todd Hartley did it again. He got himself another tight end. Jaden Riddell, you got yourself another freak. I mean, that's obviously good news. I mean, knowing what Brock Bowers was able to do for this program, how much he opened up, knowing that there's another freak in line right behind Oscar Delp, who's a tremendous tight end in himself already, but knowing when Oscar Delp does go off to the NFL, you already got another one in line for him. That's obviously great news to hear. Another one of those freshmen that's already popping. And then my third and final one, the defensive line is taking shape, but also in a different way than what maybe some kind of expected. I know that this maybe wasn't like concrete. This is kind of what they're rolling with, but knowing like it was Stackhouse and then Jordan Hall rolling together in the reps at practice. And then also that just goes without saying all the other names, of course, beside him, but Jaw Jarrett and Warren Brinson, all those guys. The defensive line, this was kind of a big question, especially the interior guys. Knowing that this is taking shape, that's good news to hear for me this early.
I just emailed you a link to that video I was talking about with Zovi. See if you can pull that up for the stream for folks. Okay. Because it is super elite. Any other takeaways, just general?
Yeah,
they're not exactly healthy, but it was all selective injuries.
I got to give my 3 cents.
Oh yeah, let's get yours while we load up this Zovi video.
So the first one I have is moving Michael could be the best position change a UGA player has ever made.
Yeah.
I mean, the only other one I can think of that has been like super impactful is McCole Hardman because he came in as a safety.
Yeah.
But other than that, like Michael Williams moving to Jack might be one of the biggest position changes in college, like not college history, but UGA history for sure.
Yeah, I mean, last year they had a major one. Bull moving from star to safety, it made room for the most impactful football player they had defensively last year, Tyke Smith.
Yeah.
So, yeah, position changes are important. It also, people talked about this week. It says a lot about Michael. To be 6'5", 265 pounds, and then be willing to drop you. It's the limits of what's existing, by the way. You can't get any bigger at that spot. If you get any bigger, you're too stiff or too vulnerable in the pass.
How many wheel routes do you think Georgia gets this year?
With how much safety help they have,
yeah.
I don't think they get as much anymore. Do you have it pulled up?
Yeah, it's over there on the big screen.
All right, roll a camera over there.
Do you want to do it now? Or do you want to?
Yeah, I want folks to see this. This is Zovi, and it was part of my takeaways. This guy right here, guys, he's going to be something. Can you zoom in just a little bit? He's going to be at the rim. This is an oop he picks up. He goes baseline off 2 feet right here. Start that video over for the folks there, Jay Will. Oh, it's all right.
That's awkward.
We love a buffer around here, bro. We love a good buffer.
Well, it's buffering.
Shouts out Elon. Shouts out. He's like right at 5'8". He's about 5'10" nowadays.
It's like Nate Robinson.
Yeah, he's a plus 42 guy.
That's
42
insane.
inches north of that. I would say he's going at combine whenever he's released out of the constraints of the University of Georgia. He will probably be sub 4.45 kind of guy.
That's insane.
The first time I ever met him, he was at a 7-on-7, and he playing for Hustle Inc. And I had heard about him, but he starts barefoot, starts doing all these like round off back handsprings. And I've seen a lot of kids do backflips nowadays because it's like something they train themselves to do because I guess Fortnite was cool. But this dude was getting like multiple feet off the ground while doing these flips. And I videoed it and sent it to Georgia like, bro, do y'all know about this dude? And like a month later, he goes to a 7-on-7 at Georgia and is just, dunking on people, jumping over people and catching balls. He went viral at 7-on-7 for Georgia. There's a video of him jumping over a kid and taking one off of his face mask. And then right behind him, you can see the visor. You can see Kirby standing right there. And Kirby kind of like, you can see him in the video. He waves over his assistant, and they're like, who the fuck is this? Offer, committable, see you. Anyways, finish your takeaways. I promise we're getting to SVP.
Other one is there isn't a room on the offensive side of the football that is lacking in talent or is kind of like, hey, we're worried about this room this year. Like quarterback, obviously you know what you've got. Running back room, I think, is more stacked than you've ever had. Even if you have some injuries. Wide receiver room, you're dealing with some injuries there, but guys have been stepping up in major ways. I think Colby Young has been a pleasant surprise in that. So it just seems like every room that you have in the offensive side of the football right now is loaded. And then the third one I have is Cedric Van Pran was way more important than a lot of people realize. Just because, I mean, not having him there, you hear players talking about it already. The reads are different. Carson's got to do more pre-snap. So I think a lot of people are going to figure out very quickly how big of a deal SVP was to the offense.
And that's a good tee up because we're going to that interview right now. This is a great one, man. This is a guy that I've thoroughly enjoyed covering. Did everything the right way, okay, from start to finish. Did everything the right way, including treating the media like he does. I mean, my God, this guy did every single post-game interview for the last 2 years. He was the most often thrown media availability guy towards us media, so you've heard from him a lot. I guarantee you have not heard him like this. He spends 45 minutes with us here and another 45 minutes with us on Patreon. You're going to get the 45 minutes here right sitting next to us. Appreciate you guys. Make sure you hit that thumbs up button and enjoy this interview with Cedric Van Pran-Granger. What is up, ladies and gentlemen? I have a very special guest here for you today. Very unique to our platform that we get the opportunity to do this. I don't know what it is about our network, but we are afforded these opportunities every once in a while. A gentleman that I've covered said, y'all are the first class, okay, that I covered from high school, okay, all the way until you're done at the University of Georgia. I haven't been doing this for very long, but you were the first from start to finish class I ever got to cover. So I want to thank you first and foremost for coming on the network, man.
No, it's my pleasure. I appreciate the opportunity for sure.
Yeah, no doubt. So the first question I got for you is how, first of all, does a kid from Warren Easton is 90 minutes from Baton Rouge. How does a kid from New Orleans, Louisiana end up at the University of Georgia?
Well, I think the first thing is I want to make sure that I don't, bash them, anything like that. But I think in all honesty, I just think Georgia was first. Coach Smart, really showed interest when I came to camp, and I got my offer that day. So, in all honesty, I think they just showed a little bit more interest.
I heard you at the NFL Combine. I think you said something along the lines of, I want to thank Coach Smart for giving me the opportunity.
Yeah.
And, I think you said take a chance on a guy from New Orleans. Bro, wasn't nobody taking a chance on you. You were the number one center in the country. Everybody wanted you, didn't they?
I mean, you could say that. Maybe everybody in the Southeastern Conference, but in all honesty, I've seen some things happen. And typically, like you said, most kids out of the state of Louisiana don't really get out of the state of Louisiana. So I know he was super nervous about whether or not I would stay committed and stuff like that, but. I believe that's him taking a chance on me,
Yeah, and it wasn't just, your relationship with Coach Smart had to be really, really strong because you commit to the University of Georgia, I think in August of your junior year or your senior year, right?
Yeah.
And you commit to Sam Pittman as your offensive line coach, right?
Yeah.
And then 6 months later, right before National Signing Day, he takes the head coaching job at Arkansas. I guess if you can, just take me back to that moment where, hey, man, my position coach is gone now all of a sudden.
Yeah, so the biggest thing, so I ended up committing in August, and that wasn't supposed to happen. I was supposed to commit at the Under Armour game because I knew I was playing in it, and that was always like a lifelong dream. I grew up, watching, like Tyron Johnson and Leonard Fournette and all of those guys, playing the Under Armour game and committing and all of that stuff. So that was the dream that I had. My dad didn't think that was smart. He was like, hey, I understand you have dreams, but it's time to lock in a position for your future. So at that point, I just decided to go ahead and commit. But when Coach Pittman took the job at Arkansas, he came back to my school to try and say, hey, man, I'm at Arkansas. I really would like for you to come over there. And I appreciated it, but it's kind of hard to ask somebody to just up and, basically move everything and everything that they had planned on doing for the future to follow your dreams and, things that you want to do. And I respect that, of him. But in all honesty, I felt like I wanted to stay with Georgia. And Coach Luke did a tremendous job of building that relationship. So I was fine with it.
Coach Luke had about, I think he ended up signing in February, right? So
yeah.
he had about a month and a half to kind of lock that one down. It's interesting to hear you say that Pittman kind of tried to get you, right? Like that's kind of the opposite of what we've heard from a guy like Broderick.
Okay.
Broderick kind of said that Sam was like, hey, man, Georgia's like the spot for you. But it sounded like Coach Pittman still wanted you at Arkansas.
Yeah, he tried to get me. When coaches were coming through the school and, stuff like that before that signing period, he came to the school and, hey, man, I just want you to know, actually the first thing he said to me, because I was in shock that he came. And he's like, man, I could just see the look of a man who has disappointment on his face, because we hadn't heard anything. We didn't know that he was leaving. We found out, like everybody else found out on Twitter.
To say, bro, he was an assistant coach. He was a position coach. They went from a position coach to a head coach in the SEC. I don't think anybody expected that, even him. I don't think he expected that job to be, something that was available to him at the time.
So nobody knew. We just found out through social media. So, I was a little mad. I was a bit upset, and that's typically, I would say, not something that I don't think I get mad very often. I do get aggravated, but I don't think I actually get mad very often. But I was mad at that point, and he kind of saw that. But he tried to tell me, hey, I respect it if you decide to stay at Georgia, but just know, I would love to build something special with you, and I think we could do some great things at Arkansas. I just didn't feel like that was in my future.
So you end up at Georgia, but before then, man, I remember watching your high school highlight tape. And especially your junior tape was great, but your senior tape, I always tell people it's like watching. You remember the movie Blindside?
Yeah.
All right, and how they portrayed Michael Orr in that movie, where he's just blocking dudes and throwing them over the fence line and shit.
Yeah.
Watching your high school tape at center was like watching Michael Orr almost. Every play was 12 yards finished, dude getting rolled on the back of his head. 9 times out of 10, you weren't even landing on the dude either. It was all hand shocks.
Yeah.
Do you remember just how dominant you were on a high school football field?
In all honesty, I wouldn't even say dominant. Of course, you would have, great plays and stuff like that, but my focus was so much on Warren Easton and can we win a state championship, that I didn't even focus on myself. I wasn't, it was great to, pancake dudes and all that stuff, but it's all right, did we win? are we going to beat in the car this year? That was my focus, so didn't happen. But
you lost 2 heartbreakers, didn't you?
Yeah.
The state title game to the same team 2 years in a row?
Yeah, and they're actually
no,
it's fine. It's crazy now because I didn't like them, but now one of my best friends, he goes to Florida State, ironically. He went to Edna Carr. He's one of my best friends now, Jamie Vance. But anyways, so we lost one, I think by 7 my junior year, state championship, and then we lost to the same team by 1 my senior year. And so that's all I was worried about. I was like, man, are we going to win and can we beat this team? Everything else kind of didn't matter to me.
I do want to talk about the willingness to finish, though, on your high school tape, because when I'm watching young offensive linemen on the high school level, I always tell these guys, first and foremost, it ought to pop. It ought to feel explosive. Everything ought to feel explosive. When you meet and you finish, your hands and your hips and everything ought to roll explosively, because you're going up against an opponent that can't quite battle your resistance or your power. It ought to feel like you're dominant, right?
Yes,
but the other thing I ought to see is a willingness to finish. My coaches always used to say, block through the echo of the whistle. Not to the whistle, but once that sumbitch stops echoing off the walls, right? We gotta block and finish. And when I don't see it on high school tape, I get really, really worried. When did you start really finishing blocks, every single play? Because it even pops up on your college tape, man. You're a high effort guy.
Yeah, so I would say I think it starts in practice, in my opinion. Now, I got to college and you can't really do that as often. You kind of want to keep guys healthy and, that type of stuff. Now, there's every once in a while you got to do what you got to do. But it really started for me in high school practice. It was more so it kind of became habit. And you were talking about the explosion and all that stuff. But I'm going to be honest, for me, it more so felt fluid. It's more of a thing once your feet get going, they're not stopping. And that was the biggest thing for me in high school is that, yes, there's the initial explosion off the ball, and you get your pop. But after that, once you get your feet moving, it kind of doesn't stop after that. It's more like a train just rolling. So that was the biggest thing for me in high school was that I felt like my motor was just so high at that time, like I just couldn't stop, if that makes sense.
Where'd the nickname Hoodie Burger come from?
I gave it to myself.
I
gave it to myself.
Hey, ain't nothing wrong with giving yourself a little nickname once in a while, you know what I mean?
Gave it to myself. So in New Orleans, no one calls me Cedric. No one calls me Sid. Everybody down there calls me Burger. That's my nickname in New Orleans. So like, there's been times I've had people who I've met through different things. Like for instance, when I went down previously to train at the Star in Texas, I met one of my guys, Patrick Willis. I said Patrick Willis, Willis Patrick. Anyways, he met another guy, who played at TCU with him, named Champ. We call him Champ at Warren Easton. And Champ was like, say Willis, you know my boy? I'm like, who you talking about? He like, man, my boy Burger. He like, Burger? Who you talking about? He like, Burger, man, you know Burger? Like, he like, Cedric? He like, yeah, man, Burger, we call him Burger. So in New Orleans, nobody calls me Cedric. My name is Burger, but at that time, my favorite
Did you eat a lot of burgers or something?
Nah, so it's a long story. I played on this park ball team called Easton Park. Yeah. Ironically, went to Warren Easton. But played at Easton Park, and there was a guy who came before me named Burger. And they told me that I reminded them a lot of him. He was like a park ball legend. He was
Stuck
great.
Forever.
Yeah, and so they were like I was Little Burger at that time. And then when I went to high school, we dropped the little. It was just Burger.
Something about offensive linemen getting nicknamed with food. I was nicknamed Ham Hocks in middle school and high school because my quads were so big.
That's crazy.
They look like ham hocks.
Yeah,
so they call me Ham Hocks.
That's crazy. But at Easton we had a bunch of crazy nicknames. So I was Burger. We had French fry, we had potato, honey bun, ding dong,
a lot of
Twinkie,
food related.
We had a bunch of different stuff. Nah,
anybody getting
no
beignets?
That would be a bad one.
Ah, damn.
That would be a
Not
bad
a beignet
one.
fan?
Nah. Well, I'm a beignet fan. Let me say that, but I wouldn't want to be called a beignet.
Yeah,
that'd be crazy.
Yeah, I feel you on that one. What was it like, man, growing up in New Orleans? Like, I have a story myself about my only interaction with New Orleans. I was traveling to New Orleans for the Sugar Bowl in 2019 by myself. Yeah. New Orleans, probably not a city that you need to be in by yourself.
100%.
Unaware of where you're at.
Yeah.
The first thing I did, I needed a haircut. So I was like, I'm gonna get, ingratiated with the locals. I'm gonna go to the local barbershop. I'm gonna get my haircut. Go see what's happening. And the man cut my hair. He's like, so who you down here with? I'm like, oh, I'm down here by myself. He stopped his clippers, put them down, and was like, don't you dare go out by yourself at night. Like, you just need to stay in your hotel, dog. Well, what was it like growing up in New Orleans?
I'll say this. So just speaking to what you're talking about, like, yes, there's violence and, stuff like that. But in all honesty, that wasn't my testament. Like, of course, I've seen some things I probably shouldn't have seen down there. But that wasn't what I was surrounded by. My family did a tremendous job of shielding me, from I guess the deeper side of what was actually going on. And as you get older, you start to find things out and figure it out for yourself. Yeah. But in all honesty, my experience with New Orleans was fun. Growing up in the neighborhood, playing, what we call pitch up tackle. I know people call it different things like throw them up, bust them up, and stuff like that. But we call it the pitch up tackle. So playing in the neighborhood, pitch up tackle, and playing tackle football on concrete in the street. Playing basketball in the neighborhood, just having fun as a kid, so that was my childhood, growing up around the neighborhoods, playing, and you would go to different neighborhoods and play against other people, and that's what it was for us, eating good food, and that's kind of what it was. And of course, like I said, there was aspects of different things, but that's not what I remember. I remember it being fun, and if you kind of stay out the way, you don't really run into it too much.
So everyone, no matter where you come from in this game, we all have the same origin stories of loving the game, throw them up, bust them up. There's obviously, like you said, different names for it everywhere you go. But it starts with love and enjoyment of this game, and then at some point it almost feels like work, or at least the game requires a lot of work. But in order to work at it like that, you still have to have the joy and passion and the love for it. Yeah. So I'm curious, was there ever a blending of the two where maybe I don't love it as much as I used to, but I damn sure are working harder at it? I don't really know what I'm asking.
I get what you're saying.
You see what I'm saying? Where like it doesn't We sometimes lose that childish joy for this game. How do you maintain that childish love for the game of football? Because you need it to play this game like at the elite level.
100%. So I'll say this: when I was younger, I did not play organized football. I played in the neighborhood. I was a kid that was 10 years old playing with 16-year-olds. I was that kid, right? So bigger, you want to go play with the older kids, cool. But it took me a certain age to be able to play organized football. So my dad tried to get me to play organized. I wasn't ready. I hated people yelling at me. Absolutely couldn't stand it. And the reason why is because I take so much pride in what I do. Yeah. When people would yell at me like, oh, you did this right, it hurt my feelings at that time, right? So 7, 8, 9 years old, I couldn't take that. I was like, man, like, you telling me I did this wrong. I'm putting my all into this, you get what I'm saying? So I couldn't really take that at the time. And as I matured, I finally told my dad, like, hey, like, I'm ready. And he didn't believe me. He was like, we'll see, right? So first year, didn't play much. Second year is kind of when it started to click. And going into high school is when I would say everything started to really come together for me. And I think a big testament would be losing my grandmother, which is kind of crazy that became my motivation. But losing her, long story short, she lost her life to bone cancer. I didn't know. But she spent her last days on earth driving me to football practice. So at that point, I didn't know what was going on, but I felt like, man, if she could quite literally die for my dreams, I could definitely give them all while I'm alive. So that kind of turned me into a different person when it came to working towards football. And it became very enjoyable because when you're doing it with the guy you grew up with around the corner. You're doing it with this teammate you've been knowing for 3-4 years. You're doing it with this guy and that guy. Yeah. And it just becomes this different thing. And I will say this, is the older you get, there are some days you definitely don't want to do it. Like, in all honesty, I'm not going to sit up here and lie and say, oh, man, every day I go, it's so much. No, absolutely not. There are some days that you don't want to get out of bed. But I think what drives me the most and why I feel like, so in college, I can genuinely say I can't think of many times I've taken more than one day off consecutively at a time, right? So there were many weeks I was 6 days a week, if not 7, doing something football related, right? Yeah. And I think that the thing that forces me to go and do those things is that I fear that, in all honesty, if I don't do these things, there could be a game where I let my teammates down. Yeah. There could be a play where everything's on the line and you didn't make the play because you didn't put the work in. And that's what kind of motivates me. It's not so much of, it's this, childish, love for it all the time, which that more so for me comes out on game day. It's when you're actually like playing and just going. That's when the kid side comes out. But the actual day-to-day operation of getting the work actually done, for me, what motivates me is not wanting to be the guy that lets everybody down.
You mentioned something in there about how when you were younger, you didn't necessarily love the coaches yelling at you or the criticism. One of the most memorable things that I heard Kirby Smart say about you was at SEC Media Days this year, I think it was, when he talked about, bowl practices the year before. He was on the microphone and he was talking about how y'all are practicing like y'all don't give a shit. Y'all are practicing like y'all do not care. Yeah. And he said you came up to him after practice and you were like, Coach, man, I really do not appreciate the way that you said I don't care, because I do care about that. Hurt my feelings. And he just mentioned how it was a microcosm of who you are as a football player, about how everything truly does matter and you care about the perception that others might have, particularly with your effort and your attention to detail about practice.
So I don't remember exactly that moment, but I do remember doing that a few times because, like, I take that to heart, me personally, and the reason being is because, like, I just feel like that's one of the worst things you can say about a football player is that he doesn't care. Yeah. So what are you doing it for if you don't care? You know what I'm saying? I'm not basically giving up my entire life to not care about something, because contrary to what people believe, you don't have much of a life if you genuinely live football. You don't have much of a life. This is your life. And that's something that you have to cope with and accept. Like, it just is what it is. If you want to be great with this, if you want to be Hall of Famer and all these aspirations you have, this has to be your life. And that's something that I've come to accept, and I'm okay with that.
You talked about, I was just going to go back to the multiple days off, not taking consecutive days off during your 4-year career at the University of Georgia, 4.5. You know? And when you look back at it, it showed up on the football field as well. I think it was 45 consecutive starts at the University of Georgia at the center position. It was from Cincinnati in the bowl game until Florida State in the bowl game. 3 straight years of Cedric Van Pran's the guy. So I'm curious. You don't have to maybe tell me exactly what it was, or maybe you're willing to. Was there ever a point in that 45-game stretch where something happened, rolled an ankle, broke a finger, or something, where you're like, man, I don't know if I can go this weekend, but you managed to get there?
So I'll say this. Through the grace of God, I have not had, to this point, had any major injuries or anything that's been like, oh, man, like he may not be able to go. Now, of course, it's football. You have like little things going on here and there. Like I want to say my first year I had a cast on my hand or something like that. I forgot what happened, but you might pull a ligament or something like that. But nothing that'll keep you from not playing. Nothing significant. Nothing that will stop you from being able to get the job done. So I haven't really had any major injuries through the grace of God. But to be honest with you, I don't think that would have been an option.
Yeah, I was about to say, it always cracks me up to ask football players these questions because they'll say, nothing major, like I might have pulled a ligament or something, I'm gonna fuck the ligament up in my hand, but it's all good, I remember I was telling Jonathan before you got here, there was a press conference where I asked you, man, you look like you're limping a little bit, are you okay? And you're like, yeah, I think my big toenail just got ripped off in the middle of the game.
Yeah, it actually happened. It was gone. Yeah, it was off, and that was like. That was a bit painful for a few days. But
did you get stepped on?
Yeah, man. Dylan stepped on my foot. And like I think the bad part about it is I think the play that he stepped on me, I think I got like put on my butt because like he stepped on me and like he stepped on me and like and I went back and like I think as he was like stepping on me as he was going back, I think maybe he caught like directly the nail, and it just came clean off. So
that's a 600-pound squatter stepping on your toe. So yeah, there's a lot of force going into the ground there. Your first year started, man. You got at that point a 5th-year guy behind you, right? And Stetson Bennett.
Yeah.
He's starting as first year as the guy.
Yes, sir.
The year before he's kind of rotating in with Trey Hill at center. I'm curious, man. You spend a year or 2, with Stetson. And then you spend a year with Carson as their guy. What were kind of the differences between the two?
It's a great question.
Well, let's simplify it, and then we can talk about personally the differences. What were your differences in responsibilities between having a 5th-year guy back there and then for 2 straight years, and then you go in there with basically a rookie who's a 4th-year guy?
So I think my first year with Stetson, I think I relied on him a little bit more to learn and just see how quarterbacks think, right? Mm-hmm. So I got a little bit of it with JT. JT taught me a lot just from how we saw coverages and different things that he was looking for. Even Coach Monken.
People talk about him as a wicked smart football
He's
guy.
Ridiculously smart.
JT.
He is like probably, if not one of the smartest football players I've ever met.
What was it about? Just studied it or it just naturally came to him?
I'm going to be honest, I'm not exactly sure because like at that point in my career, I was just learning how to watch film and stuff like that. But he knew everything. Like he was ridiculously smart to the point where coaches trusted him like, hey, what'd you see there? Oh, I saw this. Okay. Like there's nothing else really to talk about. He saw that? Cool. Like it was, he was really, really smart. But that first year with Stetson, he was teaching me a lot of, hey, this is how I see this. And I think that's really, really important as a center is to see how quarterbacks see the game. Yeah. And the reason being is because a lot of times when it happens is if you're seeing the same things he's seeing, he doesn't have to go out of his way to make some of those calls as, hey, Carson, you want to do this? Cool. Yeah. Move on. We don't have to sit up there and have a debate at the line of scrimmage about what needs to happen. So I think that's really important. But I would say around that second year and, really the end of that first year, there was such a bond with Stetson and I that we saw things from the same, I guess, pair of eyes.
I was about to say, at one point, I think you said 4 eyes, 1 thought.
Yeah.
I think is what you told me. We got to have 4 eyes on the situation, but have one collective thought about what we're about to do.
Yeah, that's right on it. I'm not sure if I said that. You might be giving me too much credit. But similar idea, you know, same thing. Just the biggest thing is, and I kind of carried it over, you know, with Carson. And Carson was a little bit different in the fact of he would much rather prefer deal with the outside and then allow me to deal with the inside. And then, hey, this is what I'm seeing on the outside, this is what I'm seeing on the inside. What you want to do, Carson? That kind of thing. So I would say the biggest thing is I think that Stetson was more of like off script, like kind of, you know, just figure something out on the run if things don't go well. And I think Carson is a lot more strategic in what he's trying to do beforehand. And he can go off script and make some of those plays, but I think he likes to manage things a lot better at the line of scrimmage to try and get the perfect look, as opposed to Stetson, as he wants to get the perfect look, but sometimes he's just like, all right, cool. Like for instance, in the national championship we played TCU, and he spun out. He already knew that was coming, and we could have easily just changed to like a zero screen or, you know, something like that, just to have an answer for it. You rather just make the play.
You know, he did the same. I don't know if you remember, but you were on the sideline in 2020. He did the same exact thing against Auburn. In 2020 at home, Cat Bryant freed him. He's hot on the left side. He spins out and hits Kyrus Jackson on a dig, and it's like one of the best plays Stetson ever made.
Nobody talks about.
I mean, it's like first start. You know, first home start. People were still, you know, midway through the season, I think they're calling for JT Daniels. I mean, you know, it's like one of those things. So, but he had always had that.
Yeah.
You know, and it's ironically, it's both of those humans from a human nature personality, right?
Yeah.
Carson is a structured individual, seems to be an introvert by nature, kind of wants to play within the system, but has all the attributes to do outside of that, whereas Stetson Bennett by nature is a free soul. Everything about that human, I would imagine, is a free soul. Am I right?
Hey, I won't answer that.
I've interviewed him for 90 minutes, and I know exactly. I thought I knew him, and then I got done and was like, I didn't learn anything about that guy. I didn't get anything from him.
Yeah, you got to be a little closer to him for him to let you in. But yeah, he's a good guy.
Yeah, he's an interesting cat. You know, that's about all I say about him. Dude, you're a great football player, and you have great abilities, right? You're the #1 center coming out of high school. You were highly touted. You start 3 years at the University of Georgia, sit behind Trey Hill, but at some point in your career, there was a development of you off the field from a mental standpoint of studying this game, and it's become lore for you. When I asked around the building today, when I have people in like you, I want to ask people who have been around you day to day, what do I need to ask this guy?
Yeah.
And I already knew I was going to ask you about your film habits, but everyone in that building to a man today told me to ask him about his film habits. So when did they begin? I guess talk me through your process. Why are you so adamant about watching film?
So they started probably my first year playing. So
is there anything that made you think like, hey, I got to do this? Did you follow anybody doing this? Or?
So no. So I think by nature, I'm just a person who feels like they have to do the right thing all times. Like something in my spirit feels off if I do the wrong thing. So like I'm the type of person, when I start my day, I have routines. If I don't do something in the routine, I feel bad about it. Like I feel just off, like, okay, like I don't know what today is going to hold because I didn't start my day off right? So I'm that type of person. Love to have routines. I like structure. I don't like surprises. I don't like, you know, stuff just happening off script. I'm not that type of person. I don't like leaving things to chance. Just who I am. But so I felt like, well, I've heard all of the greats talk about watching film. All right, let me try to give this thing a go. Like, why not? Like, why go into a game and be at a disadvantage, right? So when I knew I was going to be starting and stuff, and the previous year, like I tried to do it, but it just didn't make sense. I'm like the third string center at this point. Like, what am I watching film for? I'm not playing. Like, I go off what coach tells me, and I'll be fine if I play for 30 seconds. Like, it is what it is. But going into that year when I knew I was going to play, I'm like, okay, like I need to lock in. I need to get a bit more serious. I need to figure out, you know, what's going on. So it started off just kind of watching it and, oh, well, you know, on the surface you can see, okay, well, they're in a 4-2 over front, you know, versus this formation, okay, and he likes this favorite move, not very deep there, right? But as I got into, you know, end of my junior and senior year, you start to notice, oh, well, when this guy puts this foot back, he's going right. Oh, if he taps his hip, they're bringing some type of strong dog. Oh, if they bring their safeties down, they're probably going zero as Missouri, right? So, like, funny, we were down there training at the Star, and I got like one of the greatest compliments ever. One of their guys that was there, he was like, "Man, like you're like a really, really good football player." And I was like, "What makes you say that?" And he was like, "Man, I still remember we played y'all this year, and you literally called out our entire play what was about to happen.
Yeah.
And like y'all like pretty much got a first down off of it because of it." And I was like I don't really remember that, but okay, cool. Like, you know, so it was just one of those things, and it kind of got to this year where I'm the type of person, I don't like to be prepared by myself. I would much rather bring my teammates along with me. So we started hosting like, you know, film sessions with the offensive line. So every Monday and Wednesday is when we would do our like, I guess, unit sessions. And it would go from probably like 7:30 to like 10:30 or 11, something like that. And Mondays we'll watch 3 whole games. And the reason why I like to watch whole games versus like snap clips is because I feel like snap highlight clips aren't real.
Yeah.
Those are just your best plays. Most
Correct.
people from play to play don't play like that.
Especially defensive linemen.
Yes, the best players in the world usually have flash plays, but they're play to play. They're typically just doing stuff just to get by. Most people. Now, some people are different. They have higher motors, and they can just play like that all the time.
Yeah, don't let Max Crosby hear this interview.
Yeah. But your average person, I would say, in reality, probably 75% of guys
Take plays off.
and, you know, stuff like that. And they're rotating in and out. So I want to see you every play. I don't want to see you when you hit a perfect move versus a slide protection that's coming to you and you got somebody else that's coming behind you, so his guys got caught by somebody else. I don't want to see that. I want to see you when it's 1st and 10, and then I want to see you on 1st and 10 2 quarters later. Like, I want to see all of that. And the reason being is because I feel like you get a better grasp of who that player is, not just his best plays. I feel like if you just look at someone's best plays, at least for me, you can overwhelm yourself by, man, this guy is all world, and he may be all world, but when you actually watch people for the entirety of a game, you start to see, you know what, he's a little bit more human than what I thought. And that was the biggest thing is, you know, trying to get a grasp on who people are, but also trying to be able to dictate in the game when and what they were going to do based upon what you've seen in film.
So here's one for you. Did the tape ever lie to you? Did you ever watch somebody and you say, he's this, and then you show up on Saturday and it was totally different?
Typically, no. I feel like the only thing you really can't see on film is how strong somebody truly is. Like, you can't
feel that.
Yeah, you can't feel somebody putting their hands on you. So, like, every once in a while you get, okay, he's a little bit stronger than what I thought. But then you just go back to, okay, who is he most similar to? Okay, is he Jalen Carter strong or is he Jordan Davis strong, right? So there's 2 different.
Explain the differences.
So Jalen Carter strong is more explosive in my opinion, as far as like he can go side to side, he can go vertical, he can switch pace with his strength. Sudden, right? Yeah. It's quick. He can do a bunch of different things off of it. Jordan is quick, but usually it's more lateral and in bursts, right? So I feel like Jalen can kind of switch his gears and kind of go, but I feel like JD is more so consistent. And then, like, once that's done, it's done, if that makes sense, right? Yeah. That's not a bad thing, but if he's going to bull rush you, he's going to bull rush you. If JC is going to bull rush you, he's going to see how you're playing it, and then, okay, well, if you're sitting this down, then I'm going to cross swipe or different things like that.
Sledgehammer versus a samurai knife or
a
sword.
You get what I'm saying? Yeah. And there's nothing against that. Both are very effective, but you just have to know what you're dealing with and how to combat it.
Ben Cleveland versus Amarius Mims.
Strength.
Just in general.
I think the biggest difference would just be length. So, like, if you go with Ben Cleveland, I think his arms, I don't remember how.
They were like 33 inches. He did not have long.
Yeah.
He did not have long
arms. I'm about to say it from what I remember.
Chested his shit.
Like this.
T-Rex
but,
arm.
Yeah, if I remember correctly, though, Ben was more so short area strength. Like, he's going to kind of allow you to get into you. I don't remember Ben being that much of a puncher. Like, I don't remember him he was more so just coming to me and I'll grab you type of thing. Or if he had to pass off a twist, then he'll play long. But if it was just a one-on-one situation, you knew that he was stronger than you.
In the square.
Yeah, so I feel like Ben was more so in a box strength, right? He kind of wants to play you in quarters, you know, that kind of thing. And I felt like Mims, he wants to keep you away from him. He wants to keep you as far away from him as possible and use that strength to hold you there. He doesn't want to allow you to get inside of his bubble, should I say, because I feel like that's to a disadvantage to him because of how large he is. So I think that would be the biggest difference between the strength of them.
All right. One question: who is the freakiest guy in-house at the University of Georgia? Just in general, whether it be I watched Buddy play hoops, I seen dude do a 46-inch box jump in the weight room. Who's the guy at the University of Georgia where you're like, damn, that guy's a freak? And then on the other side of the football that you might have played in the SEC, who's the guy that's like, that is a damn good football player?
So I'll start with the other players in the SEC. So I'll say two. One, Gervon, just because he just has God-given strength. Like I would love to like know what his actual bench numbers are, because he's like ridiculously strong. Like
he gave Trey Hill fits.
Yeah, he's strong. I'm not gonna lie to you. He's strong. But like I said, you just gotta know what you're dealing with. You gotta know how to combat that. Like, yeah, he may be strong, but okay, what can beat that, right? So it's figuring it out. It's a game within the game, as you know. But if I had to think of anybody else who was just like, man, that guy's ridiculous, I'm trying to think anyone we played that was just insane.
What about Buddy from Kentucky or the Zero? I know you didn't face him a lot, but he's a defensive tackle.
Deion Walker?
Yeah, I think it's his name. DeAndre Walker, I think it was.
Yeah, I mean, he's a good player.
Yeah.
Twitchy, but I didn't face him too much. Yeah. I'm trying to think. Honestly, probably Tommy Eichenberg. He was like ridiculously smart. Like,
wow.
He was like really, really smart. And what really surprised me was his like speed, right?
Yeah.
What really, really surprised me. Like, I don't know if like people like pay attention to stuff like this, but there was like a play in that game that Arian caught like a skinny post or a seam or something, but he caught it up the middle, up the seam. And bro, Tommy Eichenberg's like 5 yards away from him. Like, you're a linebacker. You shouldn't be running with Arian Smith. And like, hey, I said, block him. No, not happening, right? So, anyways, just that kind of stuff kind of surprised me. But if I had to go to anybody in-house, my two are going to go to Jarrett Wilson and Jalen Carter. Jarrett Wilson is like...
I saw him jump out of a pool
at
3 feet in high school.
Bro, Jarrett is like one of the freakiest offensive linemen I've ever like met. Like, I'm not going to say what I think he's going to run in the 40, but just know...
Like 45.
All I'm going to say is this. He's going to surprise... in my opinion, I think he's going to surprise a lot of people. It's going to be fast, in my opinion.
I saw a clip against Kentucky this year where, y'all blew them out, right?
Mm-hmm.
And the backups are in, and Brock Vandagriff takes off, running, scrambling.
I know what you're talking about.
You see 55 pop up in the screen, and 55 running his ass down.
Yeah.
And you're like, what is this?
Bro,
And it was like, it's the first play on his high school tape. It's him pulling out on truck, and he's playing tackle, and you could see it from day one. I think Dad played in the league, or Mom
I'm not sure.
A track runner or something. He's got tremendous genes as well. So he's a freak.
Yeah, he's crazy. But then I would say Jalen Carter. We probably shouldn't have been doing this disclaimer, but there was a period in time where like we would all go play basketball and just kind of just vibe with each other, right? Yeah. And I remember, I think we had just lost. Like we had just lost the game, so I was on the side waiting on next. And I saw Jalen Carter, so like somebody got the inbound and like they were like about to take the ball up the court. Jalen Carter got a steal at the free throw line, took one step into the windmill.
Yeah, like Zion Williamson.
Oh, you know?
Yeah.
Okay, so yeah.
No, he did it in high school.
Oh, no.
I've seen videos of him in high school doing the same exact thing, and he looks exactly like Zion Williamson.
It's insane. He like picked his pockets, he grabbed the ball, took one step, and just windmilled it. And I was like, yeah, that's insane. Because at that time, he was well over 300 pounds. So,
I've always said on this channel, we know early when they're great. Like when guys are great at the University of Georgia as true freshmen, it's a program that keeps things tighter lipped than anywhere else in the country. I think you probably felt the benefits of that as an athlete while you were there.
Yeah.
But when we hear things early on about freshmen, we're like, that guy's great. They leaked that Trey Hill versus Jalen Carter board drill.
That didn't get leaked.
That his freshman year. It didn't get leaked, but it was out immediately.
Because he posted it.
Yeah.
That's not a leak.
Nah, but I mean, he leaked it, and they got in trouble. I'm sure he probably got his ass chewed.
It wasn't that bad. I mean, we were 17, 18. Like it happens. It is what it is.
I mean, if I stonewalled a senior starter as a true freshman, I probably would have put it out on social media as well. Hey, dude, what was your favorite game? To play in before we talk about your best game in your opinion. What was your favorite game to play in, non-national title related?
I would say either. That's so tough. I would say Tennessee. Either this year or in 2021, Auburn 2020.
Both road games.
Yeah, all of these are road games.
Oh, you're a villain, huh?
Don't get me wrong, I enjoyed Sanford, loved it.
Yeah.
But like I think just as a competitor, there's just something about you. Like there's literally everyone in the stadium's like yelling and like, against you, and like that's just fun to me. I can't explain it. Now, don't get me wrong, like love playing at Sanford. We definitely had the advantage, right? And our stadium got ridiculously loud, like to the point where we couldn't hear each other like on the sideline. So thank y'all for that. But seriously, like I just enjoy nothing against them. It's just I enjoy personally as a competitor when the odds are against you. That's what I enjoy.
And being on that sideline pregame at Tennessee this year, you weren't the only one that took up that kind of attitude about that stuff. I mean, you know how many smiles I saw walking back into that locker room? You go out there and warm up, and everybody's motherfucking you the whole time, whatever, and then you walk back into that ball, that tee right there, and their whole student section, Jonathan, is right there on you. I mean, they're as close as they possibly could be. And about half of y'all were just smiling, looking at them just like, y'all don't even know. Y'all have no idea. And, of course, they come out and score a 80-yard touchdown to start the damn football game. But then after that, you kind of walked.
I'm kind of happy that did happen, though. Like, that's like, I think that type of stuff tests a team. Like, who are you, right? So I'm happy that happened, but I enjoyed it. That's Tennessee and Auburn on the road are, like, my favorite places to play outside of Sanford. Like, it's going to be loud. It's going to be hostile and humid.
And it doesn't really matter. Well, Tennessee, y'all beat the hell out of. But Auburn, since Kirby has been there, when y'all go there, it doesn't matter what that team looks like. You're going to get a fist fight. No matter if they're a 5-5 football team or they're not, they're an 8-0 football team, you are going to get one.
Yeah, 100%.
All right, let's watch some film together. Let's go to the board.
Let's do it.
All right. So, you're right-handed.
Okay.
Right? So I want you to stand on the right side of the board.
All right, let's do it.
That side.
Okay.
In case for some reason you got to draw or anything like that, but I don't think you're going to have to. Just kind of point with your finger if you ever want to show anything. Like he was just over here and he motioned over, and y'all are about to run the inside zone this way.
Okay.
Okay, so just kind of tell me what your mic IDs would be, all that good stuff. Or you said, here's what I want you to do for the folks at home, all right? Because we talk about mic IDs with centers all the time, what your responsibilities are, all that good stuff. Explain this to me. We got a basic standard inside zone coming back this way. All right, I don't want to explain too much for the audience. Walk me through. You walk to the line of scrimmage. What are you looking at, man? What are you talking through in your head?
Gotcha. So coming up to the line, like you said, standard weak inside zone. So first thing we're looking at is the box. Box count, roughly about 6. Some people would count them in the box.
I was about to say, are we going to count this overhang?
Yeah, some people would, some people wouldn't. But just for the purpose of this, we'll just keep it standard 4-2, 6-man box. Now, the biggest thing that I'm looking at right now is these two guys. You got a 3, type 5. There's a high possibility that these guys are probably slanting inside and they're bringing something outside. If this guy, with him being strong in his A-gap, even if he bumps to being directly overhead of me, we probably know something is coming. But based upon what I'm seeing right now, I'm assuming that we're probably late in our snap count. So we're probably not digesting this the way that we probably should, as if we're just looking at this.
Yeah.
But as of right now, we'll just ID 9, get a combination block going here to number 9 with Dylan and I. But depending on where he is, if he stays in his 3, I can kind of climb. If he slants under, I should be there to help Dylan. But if I'm remembering this game properly, I think that this specific week, based upon game plan, I was fast flow to the mic. So we'll see what happens.
When I was playing center in Division II ball next to guys who might not be playing on Sundays like Dylan will be at one point and Tate will be at one point, are you guys all nonverbal at this point?
Pretty much nonverbal. So we're not saying any of that. Everything we're not saying any of that.
Mics?
We do. So I'll give, we'll give him a mic call. So we say, hey, whatever block to number 9. I don't want to expose Georgia stuff, but whatever block to number 9 there, and you kind of get it going. But that's kind of how we did it. Anything else? The only way we would say anything about these two guys, so we called them Siamese twins. The only way we would say anything about that is that if we wanted to push out, if let's say
a fan call or something like that.
Yeah. So let's say Ernest, saw something coming. He can push this point to anything coming. Maybe it's a safety, a nickel. I'm not sure where the strength of the formation is. I would assume this way.
Yeah.
But depending on what happens here, we can push out to that. But as of right now, not seeing anything. So we'll just keep it Mike number 9.
So what you kind of talk about, like you already anticipating something from space coming just based off of alignment?
Just based on how tight those guys are. It looks like he's already look like, because look at this. Yeah. Here you got a 2-eye, you got a 5, but this 5 is a little bit looser. He's almost getting in the territory, like he's about to try to crawl into like a 4-eye almost.
Yeah.
So we'll see. Maybe they play it straight, but I do know that was something that they did a lot. So just based upon that, we could possibly change this.
And when you're getting like data packages, when y'all go to break down opponents on Monday, you kind of know what fronts they should be lining up in, right? Was there ever an opponent where like y'all all week practicing 4-2-5, like we're gonna get this, we're gonna get under against this, over against this? You line up on Saturday and they've completely chalked their game plan.
100%. That's usually what happens.
What people do to Georgia.
Yeah, but specifically, more so when we played, some of the schools who aren't in our conference, they would kind of do stuff like that. So, hey, they've been preparing for this all week. Okay, well, we'll throw something new at them. And honestly, it's a struggle for at least a quarter football because you're trying to figure out what all are they doing. And there's a lot of communication that goes. So from the top press box all the way down to the coaches on the sideline, all the way to us. But we're on the field, so coach is telling you something, they may change it again. So it's a lot of different things that are happening. But the biggest thing is if you're on the field, yes, you have to listen to coach, but at the end of the day, you got to get the job done. Because if you listen to coach and the job still doesn't get done, you're still getting in trouble for that. Yeah. So you got to figure out ways on the fly to be able to communicate with the guys that are on the field with you to get it done. A lot of times, a lot of coaches would much rather you just problem solve and get it done and talk to them about it on the sideline as opposed to just blindly do what I say. At some point.
That's why recall as a football player is really, really important, right? What have you seen? You walk over there. Guys are still, y'all got all them tablets nowadays, but guys still work on them whiteboards, man.
I wish we had.
Still over there working on them whiteboards. But you mentioned something that I think fans should pay attention to, right? Like some of these slow starts oftentimes offensively can be just chopped up to, hey, we weren't prepared for that. Give us a couple quarters. Hey, man, I'm super excited to continue to talk some actual football with this man right here. He's an obviously really, really smart football player. If you've enjoyed any of this, we're about to break into this film even more on patreon.com/Brooks Austin. So if you're over on YouTube, this will be it for you guys. Wave bye to the camera, Sed. We'll see you guys later. Join us on patreon.com/Brooks Austin for the rest of this. All right, Sed, let's actually watch some ball.
There he was, Cedric Van Pran-Granger. Like I said, spent about 45 minutes with us. And I love being able – the interview is great. I think I'm a decent interview, okay? We do a decent enough job allowing the personality out of those human beings to present itself during those moments. However, I think what we're best at on this network and what I really, really enjoy about those opportunities is to be able to get up and get on that microphone or get on that board, rather, with those individuals and actually talk the game of football. Okay, see how their brain works. And every single time I do, I learn more and more about the game, right? I haven't played in a long time, right? It's been 5 years since your boy strapped it up. I think 5 years, maybe 6 this fall, maybe 7 this fall. Who knows? It's been a while. And just in that 6 years, the game of football has dramatically changed. So when I have an opportunity to talk it with an individual like that who y'all see it, y'all can hear it. He is incredibly football smart. He's incredibly smart, period, right? He's a tremendously bright individual. But when you get those guys on the board, man, you get to learn and absorb the game at a much, much higher rate than even I pride myself on being able to talk and being able to absorb. I hope you guys enjoyed that. If you really liked it, okay, you got a little taste of him talking that ball there at the end. We actually watched that tape with him, and we learned a ton more about not only the University of Georgia, but the game of football as a whole. I appreciate you guys for being here, man. Ran a little bit over tonight. I don't apologize for it. I hope you enjoyed it. Make sure you hit that thumbs up button on your way out. We will be back tomorrow here on the channel live at 8 o'clock. Appreciate you being here. Love you. We'll see you tomorrow.